Satoshi Osako, a 40-year-old top player in the VR RPG Sword and Sorcery 7, was legendary under the name Zealous Merlin, the Great Sage. One day, he led the strongest party in the game to challenge the final boss. They were just a hair's breadth away from finishing it off. But the boss pulled a suicide move, roaring that it was taking everyone down with it. The final explosion killed Satoshi, ending his life right as his journey reached its peak. Or it would have, if he hadn't woken up in a completely different world. Zealous found a message from a goddess, saying she'd reconstructed all his gear and items. He wasn't thrilled. At his age, he just wanted a quiet life without any trouble. That didn't last long. He stumbled onto a group of bandits attacking a noble carriage. The Great Sage told him to get lost and waved a hand, effortlessly clearing the road. The thugs fled in terror, screaming about demons. Zealous decided to escort the nobles to town since he was headed that way anyway. That's where he met Celestina, the daughter of a noble family. They traveled together toward the Grand Duchy of Solstia. At the mansion, he was offered a proper meal and nearly moved to tears. He'd been surviving on garbage for so long that real food felt like a miracle. Creston Van Solstia watched him eat, wondering what kind of rough life he'd been living. Zealous casually mentioned he'd been eating wyvern meat because he kept getting lost in the forest. The Duke nearly choked. Wyverns are considered sky demons. The elite sorcerer just shrugged it off as ordinary lizards, making Creston realize this guy's common sense was non-existent. Meanwhile, Tina peeked from around the corner. He eventually asked if the girl was also a magic user. The old man admitted that despite her noble blood, she wasn't capable of casting magic. Zealous found it hard to believe, since everyone usually has some spark of mana. But the Duke insisted they tried everything to find a cause. He asked the sage to take a look. Zealous noticed her mana was a bit low, but nothing that should stop her from casting. He started wondering if the problem was actually with the technique she was being taught. Celestina was shocked at the suggestion that her study book might be the problem. Zealous grabbed the book to see what it was teaching her. He was immediately disgusted. The flaws in the magic circles looked like they were put there on purpose. It was just ugly work. He told them bluntly that the material was awful, leaving the two nobles stunned. He explained that the spells were designed to be incredibly inefficient, requiring way more mana than necessary for basic results. Basically, it was a terrible way to train a sorcerer because it relied entirely on raw force instead of skill. Creston realized this wasn't an ordinary man if he could spot those flaws instantly. Tina begged him to make the magic easier to use. She was desperate to cast spells, no matter what it took. Seeing her resolve, the teacher agreed to give it a try. He started stripping away all the useless junk from the spell's circle right then and there. Within seconds, he had an optimized version ready. Tina was flabbergasted by how fast he worked. He explained that he'd reduced the mana requirement and added a way to supplement it with an external source. He told her that if she mastered this, she could even cast without chanting. The girl promised to do her absolute best. She focused her mind and called out the spell Torch. A small flame flickered into existence on her finger. She was overjoyed that she finally succeeded, even if Zealous thought it was just a tiny candle flame. She couldn't believe the day had finally come where she could use magic. She ran off to show her maid, but since the flame wasn't stable, it sputtered out as soon as she stopped feeding it mana. The mentor warned her that maintaining the magic is the hard part, so she had to stay focused. The Duke started tearing up, explaining that Tina wasn't a legitimate child. She was his son's daughter with a servant. Because of her birth and her struggle with magic, she'd been shunned and lonely her whole life. Seeing her reward for all that effort meant the world to him. He suddenly asked if Zealous would stay for the next 2 months to be her tutor. The sage was caught completely off guard by the job offer. Zealous was taken aback when Tina called him Professor, but she insisted that anyone who taught her magic deserved the title. She was beaming, telling him that thanks to his help, she could finally move forward. She begged him to keep teaching her more. The sage gave in with a tired smile, realizing he wasn't going to win this argument. Creston was thrilled and suggested they start the lessons immediately in the family's private forest. Zealous was impressed by just how much land these nobles actually owned. Once they got to the forest, he complimented Tina on being a fast learner. She was surprised he thought she had a knack for it. He decided to turn the training into a competition. Would he finish optimizing her entire book first, or would she run out of magic? She accepted the challenge with a competitive spark. Suddenly, a loud snapping sound echoed through the trees, making them both jump. Something big was nearby. A level 15 blood bear burst out of the brush, roaring and ready to kill. The guards shouted for everyone to run. While the Duke wondered how it got past the walls, Zealous calmly cast steel shackles, binding the beast instantly with heavy chains. With the bear pinned, the mentor asked his student if she remembered the attack magic he'd just shown her. He told her to fire at the bear, promising she'd get a huge level boost. Tina was panicked, saying her maximum limit was only 3 casts. He simply told her that'd be plenty and cast Tenma's Blessing on her, surrounding the girl in a powerful aura. He explained it was an original enhancement spell of his that would boost her magic power for a short time. He told her not to hold back. Tina took a deep breath and agreed to give it a shot. She focused on the snarling bear in front of her. She chanted the incantation, calling for crimson flames to burn her enemies. A massive fireball slammed into the blood bear with a violent boom. It was way more powerful than anything she'd ever done before. Zealous cheered from the sidelines, telling her to finish it off with her other spell. She was dizzy from mana surge, but managed to nod. She unleashed an air cutter, sending a jagged blade of wind straight at the monster. The wind blade sliced clean through the bear, ending the fight in a single strike. Even she was shocked by the sheer destruction she'd caused. Zealous caught her as she wobbled, checking to see if she was okay after such a big mana dump. He told her she'd jumped all the way to level 11, which was a huge leap. Tina was in total disbelief that she'd actually defeated a monster with her own magic. She was still reeling from the realization that that kind of power was hers now. The sage gave her a reassuring pat on the head. The Duke was over the moon, but their celebration was cut short by a bone-chilling roar that shook the entire forest. Everyone froze as they felt the sudden wave of bloodlust. Something even more dangerous was coming. A massive wyvern dropped out of the sky, its wings casting a huge shadow over them. It looked absolutely furious. The creature slammed into the ground with a heavy thud, sending a shockwave through the clearing. Tina screamed in terror. Zealous immediately recognized it. This was likely a survivor from the group he'd hunted earlier for dinner. It was back for revenge. He sighed, complaining about how being popular is a real pain. The dragon didn't seem interested in the conversation, just in tearing him apart. The beast lunged with its massive claws, but the sage vanished in a blur of motion. Tina could only watch in awe as he took to the skies. He cast Shadow Raven's wings, black feathers and magic circles erupting around him as he hovered effortlessly above the dragon. He didn't waste any time, bombarding the wyvern with black lightning bullets from every angle. Each hit landed with a heavy bam. The creature shrieked in pain as the lightning tore through its scales. Zealous just told it to calm down, like he was dealing with a naughty pet. The dragon plummeted to the ground, its head slamming into the dirt with a final thump. It was completely incapacitated. It tried to let out one last defiant roar, but it was clear the fight was already over. The monster was just too outmatched. The wyvern tried to snap at him one last time, but its effort was pathetic. Zealous landed right in front of its jaws without a hint of fear. He told the beast he hated stubborn things and drew his blade in one smooth motion. The metal glinted with a sharp ching. In a single, blinding slash, he decapitated the dragon. The sheer force of the blow was so extreme that it looked more like he'd punched the head off. The great sage stood over the remains, looking as bored as if he'd just swatted a fly. The guards and the Duke were left speechless. The Duke was sweating, realizing this wasn't the strength of a mere sorcerer. This guy was something else entirely. Even the trained soldiers were shaking. Tina could only stare, wondering how it was possible for a single person to be this strong. She'd never seen anything like it in her life. She excitedly asked what his level was, figuring he had to be at the world peak of 500. Zealous just gave a vague answer, wondering if he'd accidentally overdone it. The reality was far more insane. A peek at his status screen revealed he was level 1879, with god-level skills in everything from sorcery to dairy farming. He was operating on a completely different scale. Zealous looked around the massive guest room he'd been given. It was way too fancy for a guy who used to live in a studio apartment. The butler, Dandis, introduced himself and told Zealous not to hesitate to ask for anything. The sage was already feeling like this whole situation was becoming a massive hassle. Dandis mentioned that dinner would be served soon, but first, he offered Zealous a bath. The idea of a hot soak after all that trouble sounded like heaven. The butler led him to the baths, providing fresh towels and encouraging him to wash away the day's fatigue. Zealous was practically drooling at the thought. He stripped down and headed into the steam, thinking about how long it had been since he could really relax and enjoy a proper bath. But as he stepped inside, he realized he wasn't alone. Tina was already in the water, and she definitely wasn't expecting company. The poor girl turned as red as a tomato, her eyes spinning as she let out a blood-curdling scream of "Professor." Zealous was frozen in shock, his brain short-circuiting as the steam hissed around them. This was definitely not the relaxing soak he had in mind. Out in the hall, Dandis and the other servants heard the commotion. It turned out the butler had completely forgotten the bath was already occupied by Lady Celestina. To understand how a middle-aged gamer ended up in this awkward situation, we have to go back. Satoshi Osako was a top-tier player in the VRRPG Sword and Sorcery 7, before a fatal accident took his life. Thanks to a goddess, he was reincarnated into this new world while keeping all his insane stats. Along the way, he saved some nobles from bandits. That's how he met Celestina, a young sorcerer in training who desperately needed help, leading to the Duke hiring him as her personal tutor. Back in the present at the Saltia residence, the atmosphere in Tina's room was tense, to say the least. The girl was still beet red, burying her face in her hands while her maid, Miska, tried to calm her down. The bath incident was clearly not going to be forgotten anytime soon. Tina was dying of embarrassment, convinced she could never look her new professor in the face again after what happened the day before. There was a knock at the door. It was Zealous. Miska told her to stay calm and act natural, but the girl was already a shaking mess. Zealous poked his head in, looking a bit awkward himself, and asked if it was a good time to start their magic lesson. Tina stammered out a yes through her hands. They decided to head to the courtyard where there was more room for spell casting, though the girl was so flustered she almost walked into a wall. Once outside, the sage cleared his throat and tried to get things on track. Today's lesson was going to be about the fundamentals, magic runes. He could practically see the steam coming off Tina's head. The awkwardness was so thick you could cut with a knife. He asked if she was okay, and she shouted in, "I'm absolutely fine," so loud it startled birds. She was clearly overcompensating. Zealous decided to just push through it. He explained that magic is built from a set of 56 letters and 10 numbers, showing her the torch spell as an example. He conjured a complex magic circle, demonstrating how the runes work together like a circuit to manifest a simple flame. He told her that learning to read these runes was the key to everything. Tina looked at her textbook, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. As he broke down the components of the torch spell, showing how it pulled an external mana, the girl's eyes widened with genuine interest. He explained the technical parts, like how the spell even regulated the surrounding air to keep the flame stable. Zealous praised the ancient sorcerers who developed these systems, emphasizing that magic was built with functional priority in mind. Tina was fascinated. She asked if brand new spells could be created just by rearranging this alphabet. Zealous confirmed it, though he admitted numbers were used most of the time. She leaned in close, her curiosity finally winning over her embarrassment. She desperately wanted to see what a master's magic actually looked like. Zealous looked at those sparkling eyes and sighed. Having a student this curious was a double-edged sword. It was great for learning, but bad for keeping secrets. He decided it was time for a safety lesson. Before she got too excited, she needed to understand just how dangerous high-level magic could be. He explained that while magic can be art, it is also a terrifying tool for destruction that has claimed countless lives. He started to chant, and the ground began to rumble. Tina looked up in shock as a massive, intricate magic circle formed in the sky above them. Multiple layers of circles stacked on top of each other, crackling with dark energy. This wasn't a torch spell, this was something from another league entirely. Zealous calmly introduced his greatest magic, Judgment of Darkness. It was a top-tier annihilation spell he'd created just for fun. He warned her that if he actually cast it, everything in the entire area would simply vanish. He wanted her to see that curiosity, if taken too far, leads to things like this. He looked serious for once, explaining that powerful magic only brings conflict. People will always seek out that kind of destruction without considering the consequences. He told her that a true sorcerer must always remain neutral and aware of the weight of their power. Tina stared at him, the weight of his words finally sinking in. He turned the question back on her, asking what kind of sorcerer she actually wanted to become. Did she have a goal beyond just getting stronger? The girl hesitated, looking down her book. She'd always been taught that magic was a tool for war and national protection. The idea of a personal goal was new to her. Zealous stared off into the distance, his expression unreadable. He told her plainly that he had no desire to be a sorcerer who only existed to fight. He looked back at her with a gentle gaze, reminding her that there are countless other ways to use magic besides just blowing things up. Zealous gestured toward the greenery, explaining that magic could be used for things like creating medicine or crafting magical tools. He wanted her to realize that a sorcerer's purpose didn't have to begin and end on a battlefield. Zealous tells Tina that magic should be something that brings happiness to people, opening up endless possibilities. He looks at her with those tired eyes, reminding her to always stay aware of her surroundings and her own status. Tina nods along, taking in every word of her new mentor's advice. Now it's time for a real lesson. Zealous mentions he's going to summon a golem to help her level up, which catches her completely off guard. As she prepares, Tina can't help but admire him. Despite his insane power, he's totally humble and doesn't let it go to his head. To her, he's the definition of a true sorcerer, someone who takes full responsibility for their power to keep the world in balance. He carries himself with a quiet confidence that most mages would kill for. Looking up at him, she's convinced he's the most amazing person she's ever met. She watches him walk ahead, secretly hoping that one day, she could be just like him. Zealous stops and glances back, noticing she's totally spaced out and tripping over her own feet. They head out for the practical portion of the training. Duke Creston tags along too, wanting to see his granddaughter's progress for himself. 3 level 3 mud golems rise from the ground. Zealous warns her that even weak monsters can be dangerous if she loses focus. Tina charges in, swinging her staff with everything she's got to drive them back. Zealous watches the fight with a casual expression, while the Duke looks on with a bit more concern. For the longest time, Tina was forced to sit on the sidelines while everyone else trained. But those days are finally over. She lands a solid hit on one of the mud creatures, determined to prove she's a real sorcerer now. The golems don't stay down for long, though. They keep creeping closer as she starts to tire out. Zealous isn't jumping in to save her yet. He sees this as the perfect chance for her to really show what she can do under pressure. She takes a deep breath and centers her mana, activating a power boost to strengthen her magic. With a fierce look in her eyes, she readies her next move. She leaps into the air and brings her staff crashing down on the nearest golem. Another heavy smack connects, sending mud flying everywhere. One of the larger golems lets out a silent roar, reaching out to grab her. Tina doesn't flinch. She chants her spell, calling forth a raging water serpent. The aqua jet blasts forward, tearing through the mud monsters with a massive splash. The pressure is intense, washing away the group of golems in seconds. Thinking she's finally won, Tina lets out a cheer, thrilled that she actually pulled it off. But she's so caught up in the moment that she trips over a rock and face plants into the dirt. To make matters worse, one golem managed to survive the blast and is now looming right over her. Zealous steps in and snaps his fingers, instantly dispelling the last monster. He reminds her that a real battle isn't over until it's actually over. Tina slumps to the ground in tears, frustrated that she let her guard down at the very last second. The two men walk over to cheer her up. Despite the stumble, they're both genuinely impressed with how much she's improved. Zealous gives her a passing score, though he notes she still has a long way to go before she's a master. Watching her hug her muddy staff, he realizes she might actually become a full-fledged sorcerer in just a month. He pats her on the head and makes a promise. If she can reach level 30 in the next 2 months, he'll teach her one of his own original spells. Her eyes light up instantly. The thought of learning a spell directly from him is enough to make her forget all about being covered in mud. She's more motivated than ever, shouting that she'll definitely reach that goal and become his official apprentice. She rushes off to get cleaned up, leaving Creston curious about what kind of original magic Zealous is hiding. Zealous decides it's time to show the Duke a little taste of his power. He invites the old man to fire some magic at him, something strong and impossible to dodge. Creston doesn't back down. He was known as the Sorcerer of Purgatory in his prime, and he's not planning to go easy. Zealous just smirks, telling the Duke to let it all out without holding anything back. The Duke chants his ultimate spell, and massive magic circles manifest, ready to summon the devastating flames of Purgatory. The old Duke isn't holding back, calling upon the most destructive fire magic in his arsenal to test Zealous's defenses. With a determined roar, he commands the Inferno to reduce everything in its path to ashes. The spell name echoes across the training grounds as massive fire dragons materialize from the heat. Zealous stands his ground, looking completely unfazed as the wall of flames rushes toward him. With a casual smirk, he activates his divine silver barrier, which isn't just a shield, it's an invisible field of blades. The fire dragons are shredded into nothingness before they can even touch him, leaving only a few embers drifting in the air. Creston is left speechless, barely believing his eyes as his ultimate attack vanishes in an instant. Zealous calmly confirms that yes, it was barrier magic. He explains that it's a special kind of barrier that can change its shape at the caster's discretion, acting more like a first strike weapon than a simple wall. Zealous believes that if Tina can master even a basic version of this, she'll be able to handle both offense and defense at the same time. Seeing her growth and potential, he figures that normal sorcerers wouldn't stand a chance against her once she finishes her training. Creston admits that Zealous's magic is terrifying, but also admits it could defeat most enemies on sight. Zealous just shrugs it off. Zealous starts brainstorming cool-sounding titles for Tina's future, but he honestly thinks a cute one would be better for her. Later, Tina is back to her books, determined to keep pushing. Zealous jokes about her staying in bed from embarrassment if things get too tough, but she just tells him to watch her. Zealous heads into town to visit Veridona's magic item shop, bringing along a massive pile of monster stones he's collected. He's got high goblin stones and even a goblin king stone. The shop assistant, Cuddy, is totally skeptical and asks where he managed to steal such rare items. She points a finger at him, insisting there's no way a mage in a plain gray robe could have hunted all of these on his own. The manager, Veridona, steps in and tells her to pipe down. She's noticed something about this bum of a mage that Cuddy completely missed. Veridona realizes that the man is telling the truth. She sensed an aura coming from him that suggests he's more than he appears. Her eyes widen as she examines his robe. It looks dirty and worn, but she recognizes it as a legendary class item. Zealous tries to play it off as just a stained old robe, but Veridona decides to drop the subject and orders Cuddy to go fetch the payment. Zealous leaves the shop with a massive sack of gold, feeling like he's suddenly become a very wealthy man. He's relieved that her deal is over. Back inside, Veridona scolds Cuddy for trying to pick a fight with a monster like that. She warns the girl that she narrowly escaped with her life. She explains that the robe was actually made from the skin of a legendary behemoth, and that the gray dye was a deliberate choice to hide its true power. She shudders just thinking about it, knowing that someone who can craft and wear such gear could have ended them in a heartbeat. Cuddy is left trembling behind the counter, finally realizing just how close she came to a very bad end. Meanwhile, Zealous is wandering the market. The town is buzzing with activity as he treats himself to some delicious-looking street food. As he enjoys his skewers, he notices that a few people have been following him for quite some time. He decides to wait and see what they want. He stops in an alleyway, and sure enough, a group of kids pops out from behind a corner. He's relieved it's just some local urchins and not more bandits. The kids are bold, jumping out and demanding that the old man hand over some of the meat he just bought. They're practically drooling over the smell, begging him to share just a little bit with them. Zealous gives them a stern look, telling them that being a beggar isn't a good habit to get into. But when they mention they live at an orphanage, his expression softens. He pulls out a large bag of meat, telling them to take it and share it with his sister and the other kids at their house. The kids are confused by his sudden generosity, but he insists that he wants to accompany them to make sure they get there safely with all that food. Zealous admits he's a bit distrustful of the area and thinks it's better if an adult is with them. The kids happily lead the way before the meat gets cold. As they approach the church-run orphanage, one of the kids mentions that the Lord's son is currently funding the place. Zealous realizes that means Tina's brother is involved. At the church, a well-dressed young man is standing with a smug look on his face. This is Sylvester, the next lord in line and a real piece of work. Sylvester is busy harassing Sister Lazarus, telling her she should just quit and become his woman instead of wasting her time at the orphanage. Lazarus keeps her cool, politely telling him to leave and that she's devoted herself to the care of the children. She's clearly heard this all before. The kids fill Zealous in on the situation, explaining how the Lord's son has been hitting on the sister since the first day they met. Zealous sighs, not looking forward to the drama. Sylvester doesn't take rejection well. He threatens that if his new business venture gets approved, the orphanage won't be around much longer anyway. Lazarus is disgusted by his vulgarity and the way he talks about the dirty, bratty kids he's supposed to be supporting as their future lord. Things start to escalate as Sylvester reaches out to grab her, but he's stopped dead in his tracks by someone else's hand. He turns around to see a very tired-looking mage. Zealous isn't impressed by Sylvester's pickup lines, calling them hard to understand and completely ineffective. The kids join in, mocking the Lord's son for being lame, which only fuels Sylvester's growing rage. Sister Lazarus asks who he is, but Zealous just humbly introduces himself as a lowly commoner who happened to meet the kids. Sylvester explodes, insulted that someone in a lowly gray robe would dare to disrespect royalty like him. One of the girls helpfully explains the mage hierarchy. White is strongest, while gray is at the very bottom of the pyramid. Zealous sighs at being ranked so low, then asks Sylvester if he's sure he wants to pick a fight with someone whose power he doesn't know. Sylvester scoffs at the warning, certain that a gray-robed mage could never hope to defeat him. He launches a fireball with a roar, terrifying the sister and the children as they duck for cover. To everyone's shock, Zealous simply swats the flaming projectile out of the air like a bothersome fly. Sylvester's face pales as he stammers, unable to fathom how a mage could stop his spell with bare hands. Zealous calmly explains that he's well-versed in combat and could take on the noble with just his fists if needed. Panicking, Sylvester orders his guards to buy him time while he prepares a much more powerful spell. Zealous's expression turns icy as he warns the guards that drawing their swords would be a death wish. A chilling aura radiates from him, instantly freezing the guards in place with pure, unadulterated fear. Sylvester, desperate now, decides to unleash the devastating flames of purgatory, ignoring the danger to the town. Massive fire dragons begin to manifest as the noble chants his ultimate attack, causing even his own men to worry about the collateral damage. He commands the Dragon Inferno to destroy his enemy, sending a wall of fire roaring towards Zealous. Zealous remains calm, having already seen through the attack, and activates Phantom Rush to close the distance instantly. He blurs into motion, moving so fast that he leaves afterimages behind, completely bypassing the wall of flames. Before anyone can react, he's already positioned himself perfectly for a finishing blow. He reappears right in front of the shocked Sylvester, telling him that this is the last of his antics. With a swift and powerful movement, Zealous disperses the remaining magic and delivers a sharp physical reminder of his skill. Sylvester is left wheezing on the ground, his strongest spell completely neutralized as the guards and kids watch in stunned silence. Zealous pats his robe and notes that even at level 50, Creston still has significantly more power than this arrogant noble. He offhandedly mentions that he's currently living under Creston's care at his manor, which sends a new wave of shock through Sylvester. Sylvester immediately starts pleading, terrified that Zealous will report his behavior to his grandfather, but Zealous only finds his sudden cowardice pathetic. He gives the noble a stern lecture about the consequences of his reckless magic, asking him to think about what would have happened if a fire had started. Lazarus and the kids are amazed as the dangerous magic vanishes completely, leaving them safe and sound. Sylvester can barely look Zealous in the eye, finally realizing he's been acting like a fool, especially as the heir to the throne. Zealous finishes his lecture by reminding the noble that everyone should be treated equally, regardless of their status. Terrified and humiliated, Sylvester and his guards scramble to flee the scene as fast as their legs can carry them. Zealous watches them go with a weary sigh, thinking about what a handful those troublemakers turn out to be. The kids crowd around him, calling him a cool, old man for making the spell disappear with just his hand. Zealous smiles at Sister Lazarus and tells her he's glad a beauty like her wasn't hurt, making her blush furiously. The kids immediately start teasing him, calling him a perverted old man for his blunt compliment, much to his exasperation. As they head back into the church, the kids' comments get even more inappropriate, leaving Zealous wondering where they learned such things. Once in the church's backyard, Zealous decides it's time to do something useful and begins inspecting the soil. He uses Gaia control, causing the earth to swell and churn as he cultivates a massive area in seconds. A perfectly tilled field now sits where there was once only dirt, much to the amazement of Lazarus and the cheering children. He explains that they can now be self-sufficient with vegetables and even sell medicinal plants to help the church's financial situation. The kids keep up their teasing, but Zealous just ignores them, focused on finishing his gift to the orphanage. He pulls out some mandrake seed for compost, unaware that his little project will one day earn this place the name, the Screaming Church. Celestina swings her staff with a sharp cry. A golem shatters under the force of her spell. Zealous claps, telling her she's ready for the next level. While she celebrates, her brother Sylvester watches from the mansion window, completely blindsided by her progress. She wants more, mentioning that her classmates are already out hunting monsters. He can't believe how much she's changed in such a short time. He remembers the sister he used to know, the girl who couldn't use magic and spent her days being bullied. Back then, she'd just cry every time he beat her. Seeing her look so dreary was normal. But now she's full of confidence, and he knows it's all because of Zealous. He watches them age from a distance, wondering about the sheer amount of power it takes to control an entire army of golems at once. Mishka startles him, appearing out of thin air to ask if he's developed an interest in a new teacher. She tells him Zealous acts humble, but he secretly thinks anyone who can't match his skills isn't even worth being called a mage. Sylvester analyzes the scene, realizing Zealous is basically a commander using magic stones to fuel a whole army effortlessly. To him, the guy is a literal monster who could probably dismantle magic with his bare hands. He clenches his teeth, feeling small and inexperienced compared to that kind of power. Mishka warns him that he still doesn't know the half of it and suggests he start being more diligent. He notices she hasn't aged a day since he was a kid and makes the mistake of asking her age. The room turns ice cold as she gives him a terrifying look. He immediately drops to the ground and begs for forgiveness. Later, Sylvester runs out and bows before Zealous, begging to be made his apprentice. Zealous is completely thrown off, wondering if the kid suddenly had a personality transplant. Sylvester admits that seeing a real master made him realize how much further he needs to go. He wants his name in the history books as a legendary hero, surpassing even his grandfather. The mage tells him it's a choice, but he reminds the boy that a hero needs a real reason to fight. Since he's already teaching the sister, Zealous figures taking on one more student isn't a problem. He gives one final warning. If Sylvester doesn't take the training seriously, he won't get a thing out of it. The boy is ready for anything, though his jaw drops when he hears they're starting real combat training tomorrow. He's pumped, clenching his fist and swearing to become the best mage in history. Zealous just sighs, watching him run off and hoping that all that motivation doesn't backfire. He thinks to himself that, in the end, Sylvester is the only one who can find the answers he's looking for. The next morning, the siblings face the training golems together. Sylvester is hyped, while Tina looks a bit skeptical. The goal is simple: attack the golems persistently for 3 hours without holding back. Sylvester charges in head first, landing a heavy slash on the first target. He laughs, cutting through them with ease and thinking the training is way too simple. Zealous watches from the side, noting that Sylvester is an impulsive power type who just tries to brute force everything. Tina is the opposite. She's a technician, waiting for the perfect opening to land a precise single blow. The two immediately start bickering, with Sylvester yelling at her for being in the way while he's doing all the work. Suddenly, a thin, lanky golem appears. Zealous warns them to put some distance between themselves right now. Sylvester is too slow to react, and the golem's arm stretches out like a whip, smacking him across the face. He stumbles back, but quickly retaliates, launching a fireball directly at the weird monster. The golem effortlessly dodges the explosion, leaving Sylvester staring in disbelief. Tina tells him to stop rushing in. He's doing exactly what the professor expected. He snaps back at her, asking if she thinks he's the one dragging her down as the golem's close in. They're both starting to pant, realizing these things aren't as easy to deal with as they thought. Zealous and the Duke watch from shade. Zealous explains that the real training is staying calm when you're outnumbered and exhausted. Zealous announces he's taking control of the golems for real, and the stone creatures start chattering in response. Sylvester is practically vibrating with excitement, ready to push his limits in what feels like real combat. He throws himself into the fray, narrowly dodging the heavy blows from the training dummies. He's completely focused, realizing this is the kind of practical experience he'd never get back at the academy. Tina launches a magic attack, while Zealous warns her that a real enemy won't stop just because she's out of mana. They both realize their teacher isn't going to make this easy on them, but they're determined to prove they're worthy apprentices. Zealous tells them not to be afraid of failing and to explore their own fighting styles. The siblings coordinate their strikes, tearing through the golem army with newfound efficiency. A massive golem corners Tina, but she stands her ground and prepares a stone spear spell. Her rock lance connects with a heavy thud as Sylvester warns her that more are coming. The golem doesn't stay down, its broken parts slithering across the ground like snakes. Before Tina can react, the stone limbs coil around her, and Zealous notes that the match is essentially over. Refusing to give up, she pushes her limits and casts a power boost without even using a chant. The force of her magic blows the golem apart, catching the attention of Creston, who shouts for her to be careful. Sylvester leaps into the line of fire, shielding his sister as the stone shards fly everywhere. He strained against the impact, teeth clenched as he takes the brunt of the force. A massive explosion rocks the training ground, sending dust and debris into the air. As the smoke clears, the golems lay in ruins, and the two students can finally catch their breath. Zealous and Creston walk over to congratulate them on a job well done. The mage starts talking about his own past experiences and decides it's time to give them a little reward. He pulls out a bottle, explaining that it's a high-grade mana potion made from mandrakes. The kids are a bit suspicious since it's in an old alcohol bottle, but Zealous explains he simply ran out of containers. Sylvester takes a cautious sip while Tina happily accepts her portion. Zealous announces that today's training is finished, but tomorrow they're heading deep into the forest for the real deal. He tells them to get their gear ready because the expedition is going to be genuinely dangerous. While Tina is thrilled about the idea of actual combat, her grandfather is having a mini heart attack in the background. The scene shifts to the far-flung deep forestry, a place filled with the roars of wild beasts. Bones litter the forest floor, marking the territory of some very high-level monsters. Orcs and other demons roam the woods, waiting for their next meal to stumble into their path. Now acting as official apprentices, the siblings prepare themselves for the brutal training ahead. Zealous knows this is the only way to quickly raise their levels to where they need to be. Dangerous apes watch from the shadows, adding to the predatory atmosphere of the woods. During the carriage ride, Sylvester asks why someone as powerful as Zealous would even bother with tutoring. Zealous just smiles, saying that without work, he'd probably just turn to a lazy bum. Tina listens intently while their teacher explains that even a mage needs a modest life. In reality, he's mostly just worried about finding a steady job and buying a house at his age. 2 days later, they set up camp at the edge of the forest plains. Sylvester finds his master tinkering with a piece of paper and asks what he's up to. He tries to maintain a professional attitude while asking about the strange mark on the sheet. Zealous casually explains that he's working on creating a familiar to act as their eyes in the forest. He tells the boy to just watch and starts reciting the control spell. With a burst of light, a massive glowing bird erupts from the paper, leaving Sylvester completely awestruck. Zealous explains that these artificial demons are powered by magic stones, and their strength is heavily tied to the skill of the caster. Sylvester notes that if Zealous can summon such powerful creatures, even a wyvern would likely be no match for him. His eyes light up as he realizes just how cool and practical familiars can be in the field. Zealous offers to let him try it out, and the boy is more than happy to jump at the chance. He hands a magical paper to Celestina as well, telling them both to recite the contract spell. 2 glowing birds burst from the pages, landing on the students' hands as they marvel at the success. Zealous instructs them to let the birds fly and link their vision with the creatures to scout the area. Suddenly, their perspective shifts, and they see the vastness of the forest from high above, feeling as if they're the ones flying. Zealous notices that while his students are relaxed, the professional knights in the escort unit are on high alert. The 15 experienced demon slayers that Creston gathered are whispering amongst themselves, sensing something in the air. Creston jokes about taking Tina's place if things get too dangerous, but Zealous is determined to keep his students safe. Through the eyes of the familiar, Zealous spots a large pack of orcs nearby, closing in from the east. Alf, the captain of the guard, looks concerned when he hears there are 20 orcs at level 30 approaching their position. He immediately orders his men to prepare for battle, while the students steel themselves for their first real encounter. Zealous calmly readies his own bow, telling the siblings that it's finally time for them to gain some real experience. He steps forward with a cold, focused expression, ready to lead the charge against the incoming monsters. The orcs are staying back and watching, proving that they are much smarter than regular animals. Refusing to wait any longer, Zealous aims at the sky and unleashes a barrage of magical descent from heaven arrows. A massive explosion rocks the forest as the spells find their targets, throwing the orc formation into chaos. The knights draw their swords and charge into the fray, following their master's lead into the thick of the forest. Tina lands a heavy blow on one of the larger orcs, determined to hold her own in a fight. The beast grunts in pain, but she doesn't give it a chance to recover, moving with surprising speed. She unleashes an air cutter spell, slicing through the creature's defenses with clinical precision. The massive pig-like demon slams into the ground, and Tina realizes with a shock of adrenaline that she actually defeated it. Celestina is training hard, thinking back to the days when she couldn't use magic at all. She knows she can't afford to get complacent now. Sylvester is on the move, finding the real monsters way faster than the training dolls he's used to. He slashes through a demon with zero hesitation. He follows up with a fireball, blasting the enemy in a massive explosion. He's definitely getting the hang of this. Elf shouts at them to stay sharp. This isn't just practice anymore. It's a real battlefield where one mistake could be their last. Tina looks around for Zealous, but he's nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, the noise of combat is everywhere as orcs start closing in. Just as an orc tries to sneak up on them, a projectile slams into its head out of nowhere. It drops like stone. Tina spots where it came from, pointing toward the trees while Sylvester tries to figure out who's helping them. It's Zealous, casually perched in a tree with a bough, watching his students like it's a Sunday stroll. He's been babysitting them from shadows the whole time. Alf warns that more orcs are approaching from the flank. The situation is getting a little too crowded for comfort. They're about to be surrounded. The knights brace themselves as the pig-faced demons swarm in from all sides. Zealous isn't done yet. He draws a blade, his expression turning serious as he prepares to join the fray and clear a path. He vanishes from the branch and drops right into the middle of the orc pack. These monsters have no idea what's coming. In a literal flash, he's through them. An orc gets sliced before it can even blink. He doesn't stop, moving like a blur and taking down another monster with a single, precise strike. It's total carnage. Sylvester can barely keep track of him. He's never seen someone move with that kind of speed and accuracy without even breaking a sweat. Seeing the opening, Alf rallies the men to take down the ones Zealous already weakened. It's time for them to earn their pay. Sylvester grits his teeth, determined to keep up. He refuses to be left in the dust by his teacher's sheer power. While the students push themselves to the limit, Zealous keeps a watchful eye, making sure nobody actually gets killed. Finally, the clearing goes quiet. Every single orc is lying face down in the dirt, and the group is safe, for now. The results are immediate. Tina's level jumps straight to 32, while Sylvester hits level 59. The grind is real. Later that night, they set up camp. The fire crackles as everyone takes a much-needed breather after the day's hunt. Zealous watches the kids study their magic books by firelight. He's impressed by their passion, even if his training methods are borderline sadistic. Sylvester looks at his mentor, wondering if he'll ever reach that level of power if he just keeps pushing himself. Suddenly, Zealous's face goes pale. He makes a weird sound, and the students start panicking because they've never seen him actually look scared. He tells them something terrifying is coming. It's not strong, but it's the legendary Crazy Ape, a monster that makes even him sweat. The Knights and Sylvester have no idea why he's so freaked out by a simple monkey. They haven't realized the danger yet. Zealous explains the horror. These things only hunt men, and they aren't looking for a fight. They're looking for love. This is a harem he doesn't want. Sylvester's jaw drops as he realizes exactly what that means. Tina is still confused, and he'd really like to keep it that way for her sake. A rustle in the bushes confirms it. The predators have arrived, and they've definitely picked out their favorite targets. The apes emerge with literal hearts in their eyes. They're looking for a good time, and the men are the only ones on the menu. There's no fighting this. The entire group turns tail and runs for their lives, desperate to save their dignity from horny primates. The sun goes down over the far-flung forest, a place where the real monsters start to come out once the jokes are over. It's a vast, dangerous territory where common sense doesn't really apply and power is everything. After shaking off the apes, the Knights take down a few more orcs, feeling pretty good about the progress. They think they've won. Zealous kills the mood immediately. He warns them that the real threats are only just starting to show up as they go deeper. They move deeper into the woods, where the air feels heavier. Something massive is lurking in the shadows just ahead. A level 124 chimera drops right in front of them, roaring with enough force to shake the very ground they stand on. Zealous steps up and tells everyone to get back. He throws out his hand, chanting a high-level bonding spell. Chains of darkness erupt from the ground, wrapping around the beast and pinning it firmly in place. It's a total lockout. Sylvester is stunned by the display, but the chimera is still roaring, struggling against the magical restraints. Zealous turns back with a smirk. He tells them he's not the one who's going to kill it. That's their job. He lies through his teeth, claiming the chains will only hold for a few seconds. If they don't finish it now, they're dead meat. Talk about pressure. The chimera roars, and the students are completely paralyzed by the sight of the beast. They've never faced anything this high level before. Sylvester snaps out of it and yells for everyone to start cutting. They have to kill it before it breaks out of the chains Zealous put on it. The monster thrashes around, its goat head letting out a blood-curdling scream. The ground starts to rumble as the fight truly kicks off. The students and knights dive in, their faces twisted in pure terror as they realize how outmatched they really are. Every second counts. They beg Master Zealous for help, but he just watches from a distance. Sylvester realizes he's on his own and draws his sword with a shout. Sylvester launches a fireball while Tina chants for an air cutter. They're finally starting to coordinate their attacks. Sylvester yells for Tina to move as he steps up for a major strike. He's putting everything he has into this one move. He unleashes Volcanic, a massive explosion of fire and heat that completely engulfs the Chimera. The roar of the beast is drowned out by the blast. The smoke clears, and the Chimera is down for good. The guys shout for joy, realizing they actually managed to pull it off. Zealous rubs his chin, looking totally unimpressed. He casually notes that the result looks about right, like he planned the whole stressful mess. The massive beast lies still on the ground. Zealous walks past it, ignoring the exhaustion of his students. Everyone is wheezing on the ground, their bodies in total pain. They're checking their levels, stunned to see how much they've jumped after that one fight. The high-energy victory celebration is cut short when the group turns on Zealous. They're furious that he nearly got them killed just for a lesson. Zealous just shrugs and asks if anyone actually died. He casually admits he was lying about the chains breaking just to see what they'd do. He tells them they're too weak and would have just run away if they weren't cornered. Desperation is the best teacher, in his opinion. Zealous continues his lecture, explaining that if they rely on someone strong, they'll never survive this forest. He's raising the bar, whether they like it or not. Sylvester looks away, brooding over his master's harsh words. He knows he's right, but it still stings to be called out like that. Tina just stares at him, her eyes wide. She started to realize that Professor Zealous is a lot more intense than he looks. One of the knights rallies the troops. He admits Zealous isn't an ordinary man, and they need his harsh training to actually get stronger. Everyone cheers in agreement. Tina is beaming because she's close to level 50. Sylvester sees her and tells her they need to stay motivated and keep the momentum going. Sylvester notices Tina acting suspicious and asks what she's so excited about. She tries to hide it, her heart racing as she thinks about a secret promise she made. She slips up and mentions a promise, and Sylvester immediately loses his mind. He's jealous that Zealous might be favoring her with special magic. Sylvester starts screaming at Zealous, demanding to be taught whatever secret spell Tina is getting. He's tired of being left out. Zealous tries to explain that she has no family magic to rely on, unlike him. He offers to teach her a hidden treasure spell to even the playing field. Zealous sighs and tells Sylvester he can learn it too if he hits the requirements. Sylvester is instantly mollified and pumped up to train even harder. Sylvester gets way too close to Tina, smacking her on the back as he motivates her to move out. Zealous just watches them, wondering why she looks so annoyed. He knows that those two have certainly become closer. Maybe fighting for their lives actually did some good for the relationship after all. The peace is short-lived as a knight runs up, shouting about a major problem on the front line. A group of trolls is closing in. A pack of massive trolls stomps through the forest, their heavy clubs ready to crush anything in their path. The ground shakes with every step. Sylvester yells for the knights to attack from the sides. Standing right in front of these things is a one-way ticket to getting squashed. Sylvester leads the charge with a fireball. He's determined to handle this himself and show his master how much he's improved. A troll roars in pain as the flames hit, but it's still standing. The knights rush in, aiming for its weak spots. One of the knights lands a clean slash on a troll's leg. They're following the plan and focusing on mobility over raw power. Tina provides backup with an aqua jet, blasting a troll back with a high-pressure stream of water. It lets out a wet gurgle as it falls. Tina boosts her power, looking for a way to finish the fight. The knight she's helping is barely holding on. The knight yells there as he goes for the killing blow. They've almost cleared the first wave of trolls. Suddenly, a club slams down right behind them. The knights look back in shock as a new threat emerges from the shadows. A level 2/04 country worm erupts from the ground and bites a troll clean in half. The crunching sound is enough to make anyone's stomach turn. Zealous tells everyone to stay quiet and not move. This thing identifies its prey by sound, and is clearly hungry for more than just troll meat. The soldiers are exhausted, and Zealous knows this is a bad spot. If more monsters are waiting to ambush them, they're in real trouble. The worm looms over them, crushing another troll like it's nothing. Zealous realizes he has no choice but to step in and end this himself. He prepares a sound boom spell, noting that the average level of demons in this area is way higher than he expected. He needs to protect his students. Zealous unleashes a sound boom spell, a massive shockwave that cracks the air around him. He's taking no chances with these oversized worms. The ground erupts as more country worms burrow out from the earth. The students can only watch in confusion as the terrain around them changes in an instant. 3 massive worms tower over Zealous, their toothy maws wide and ready to strike. The rumble of their emergence is deafening. Zealous doesn't skip a beat. He channels his mana into his sword, preparing a thunder blitz to fry the monsters before they can close in. A blinding flash of lightning strikes the center of the worm pack. The sheer power of the blast sends a bang echoing through the forest. The worms are completely paralyzed by the electrical discharge, their bodies twitching as the current runs through them. One of the knights can't help but gasp in awe. With the monster stunned, Zealous moves with blinding speed. He delivers a clean slice through the thick skin of the country worm. He activates Force Enchant, his blade glowing with mana as he prepares to finish the job. He looks completely focused, a stark contrast to his usual tired self. In a flurry of movement, Zealous slashes the giant worm into several neat, cylindrical chunks. It's a terrifyingly efficient display of swordsmanship. Zealous sheathes his sword and casually suggests they start scavenging. The students just stand there with blank expressions, still processing the absolute overkill they just witnessed. The knights quickly transition from shock to pure fanboying, cheering for Master Zealous and his insane lightning attack. Zealous just looks at them with his usual deadpan expression. The mood drops instantly when a knight realizes the country worms ate all their campsite food. Now, they're stranded in the middle of a monster-infested forest with empty stomachs. Zealous tells everyone to calm down and face reality. Survival is now their top priority, and they're going to have to hunt if they want to eat. He reminds them that they've been doing their best since they arrived, but the forest is only getting more dangerous. Desperation is starting to set in for the group. Zealous gets a dark look in his eyes, telling them it's time to awaken their inner beasts. Search and destroy, he says, making it clear that mercy is no longer an option. The students shiver as Zealous lets out a low, sinister chuckle. They're starting to think their professor might actually be rotten to the core. 2 days later, the forest is filled with the sounds of battle and the calls of scavengers. The group has certainly taken Zealous's advice to heart. The training is paying off as the knights aggressively hunt down monsters. They're slashing and bashing through enemies with a newfound ferocity. The group has gone completely feral, shouting about wanting meat and killing everything in sight. It's a chaotic scene of survival-fueled bloodlust. Tina sits by the fire, nibbling on some meat while watching the knights go crazy. She thinks they've all lost their minds, but Zealous is impressed by how well they've adapted. Zealous gnaws on a large piece of meat, looking completely at home in the chaos. He explains that the law of the jungle is the only thing that matters in this wilderness. Zealous is practically radiating a dark aura as he laughs to himself. Sylvester and Tina watch him with pure concern, wondering what kind of monster they've brought along. A knight comes running back with good news. They found pieces of stolen meat. The rest of the group reacts with a roar, ready to hunt down the thieves. Zealous gets an intensely excited look, his eyes wide and a manic grin on his face. Time for revenge, he shouts, fully embracing the potential for a new hunt. The group stomps off into the woods with a collective, yeah, while Tina and Sylvester stay behind, disturbed by how beast-like humans can become when they're hungry. A whole pack of crazy apes is hanging out on the rocks, just watching the group from above. Zealous Merlin explains that the females are actually the ones to watch out for, and unfortunately, most of this nest is made of them. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms over the area as something way bigger steps out from the trees. It's the hot crazy ape queen, Arianaconga, and her HP bar makes it clear she's in a completely different league. She lets out a roar that shakes the trees, making sure everyone knows who the boss is. The other apes don't seem to care about the fight yet. They're too busy stuffing their faces with stolen supplies. The middle-aged teacher deadpans that their dinner is already in the queen's stomach, so they're probably not getting it back. Alf isn't taking the disrespect well and orders the knights to surround the perimeter for a counterattack. The instructor gives the signal, telling Celestina it's her time to shine. Celestina starts her chant, focusing her magic as she prepares to blind the entire pack. A massive flash of light explodes from her staff, leaving the apes stumbling around and completely blinded. The knights don't waste a second, tossing poison gas canisters right into the middle of the confused group. Alf sees the opening and calls for a charge while the monsters are weakened and unable to see. They rush in, hacking away at the apes while they're still reeling from the poison and light. Sylvester stays focused, shouting at Celestina to keep her guard up even if things look like they're going well. But the queen isn't affected by their little tricks. She starts smashing everything in sight with pure brute force. She looks down at them with glowing eyes, totally unfazed by the poison smoke swirling around her. A single slam from her fist shatters the ground, and the knights realize they're dealing with a much higher-ranked species. She starts stomping through their formation, making it clear that one hit from those fists would be fatal. Zealous decides he's seen enough and steps forward, casting chains of light to lock the beast down. Glowing chains wrap around the queen, pulling her arms back and pinning her to the spot. The instructor tells Sylvester and Celestina that the rest is up to them, giving them a chance to finish the job. The two launch a coordinated magic strike, firing off lightning and flame spells simultaneously. The explosion connects with a huge bang, but the queen just roars right through the thick smoke. Sylvester can't believe it. Even their high-level magic didn't do much more than annoy her. He tries a more direct approach, charging in for a lightning-fast sword strike that actually draws blood. But even that backfires when the queen flexes and snaps Zealous's magical chains like they're nothing. She starts stomping again, even more aggressive than before, as the group begins to panic. Zealous lets out a tired sigh, realizing he's going to have to do the heavy lifting himself if they want to get home. He prepares a serious spell, mana crackling around his hand as he aims for the charging beast. He fires off a roaring thunder godball that slams into her chest with the force of a nuke. The queen is instantly incinerated by the blast, leaving the students staring with their jaws on the floor. Her scorched head drops to the ground with a heavy thud, finally putting it into the fight. Zealous just lights a smoke and takes a long drag, acting like he didn't just pull off a god-tier move. The peace only lasts for a second before a pack of wolves starts howling from the rocks above. The teacher identifies them as red grid battle wolves, predators that definitely smelled the blood from the last fight. Alf and Sylvester are completely spent and can barely stand, let alone fight off a pack of A-rank monsters. Zealous tells them to focus on the wounded while he prepares to face the wolves on his own. He knows the knights are a bad match for these things anyway, and tells the kids he's taking over. The wolves don't hesitate, charging down the hill with their sights set on the exhausted group. Alf shouts a warning as the predators close the distance in seconds. Everyone draws their weapons for one more round, desperate to hold a line against the pack. Celestina is barely holding it together as the knights shout for everyone to keep their heads and for the non-combatants to get back. A wolf lunges forward with a snarl, catching the exhausted soldiers off guard as they struggle to maintain their formation. A sudden explosion of mana clears the path, and there stands Zealous Merlin, looking completely unbothered by the chaos around him. He draws his sword and tells everyone to stay down, making it clear that the danger is far from over. He narrows his eyes, focusing his power as the air around him starts to crackle with static. With a quick chant, the mage releases Thunderbolt Arrow Shoot, sending bolts of lightning raining down on the charging pack. The wolves don't stand a chance. They're left squealing and smoking on the ground as the lightning fries them where they stand. Just as things seem to settle, a massive wolf, the alpha of the pack, steps out of the shadows and towers over him. Zealous just sighs, looking more annoyed than scared as he mentions how much he really needs a nap right about now. The alpha lets out a deafening roar, but its target just calmly observes that taking this thing down requires at least S-rank strength. The beast opens its maw and unleashes a massive blast of fire, trying to incinerate the puny human in front of it. He casually casts Silver Divine Wall, blocking the inferno without breaking sweat and mocking the creature for using such a basic attack. The wolf snarls in frustration, but the human is already preparing to end the fight once and for all. He points a finger, and a massive shockwave erupts, slamming into the alpha with the force of a falling mountain. Another blast follows, tearing through the air and leaving the monster reeling from the pressure. A direct hit sends the beast skidding back, its body battered and bruised by the sheer weight of the magic. Before it can even recover, he vanishes in a blur of motion, appearing right next to the creature's neck. He swings his blade with a cold decapitate command, the air whistling as the strike connects. Blood sprays everywhere as the alpha's head is cleanly removed, and he just wipes his brow, glad that's finally over. With the threat gone, the knights start loading up boxes of monster parts while the protagonist watches the cleanup from the sidelines. They manage to harvest a mountain of materials, fur, fangs, and meat that are all valuable items on the market. A scout shouts out that the rescue carriages have finally arrived to pick them up and head back to civilization. Alf takes one look at the group and asks why they look like they've been through a meat grinder. The survivors don't even have the energy to explain. They just shuffle toward the carriages as fast as their tired legs can carry them. A cheer goes up from men as they load the last of the gear, thrilled to finally be leaving this nightmare behind. As the carriages roll out, the knights inside lean back in relief, swearing they aren't afraid of anything after what they just survived. Zealous points out that the monsters they just fought were actually the weak ones compared to what's deeper in the forest. The instructor tells Celestina and Sylvester to take it easy since they still have a 2-day trip ahead of them. The two of them are out like a light, leaning against each other as the exhaustion finally catches up. He watches them with a small, satisfied smile, clearly proud of how far his students have come. Suddenly, the carriage jerks to a violent halt, nearly tossing everyone out of their seats. He looks out the window, his expression instantly shifting from relaxed to deadly serious. The road ahead is a slaughterhouse. Overturned carriages and bodies are scattered everywhere in the dirt. It's a grisly sight that stops everyone in their tracks as they try to process the carnage. Alf kneels by one of the victims and realizes the bodies are still warm, meaning the killers are likely still nearby. The teacher's eyes go cold as he realizes the bandits who did this couldn't have gone far. He immediately orders his students to get their familiars ready to scout the area from above. Celestina and Sylvester spring into action, chanting the spells to summon their bird familiars into the sky. The birds take flight, soaring over the rugged terrain to pinpoint exactly where the bandit camp is hidden. It doesn't take long to find them. a group of men huddling around a campfire in a clearing not too far away. Sylvester and Celestina are fuming, ready to tear the bandits apart when they hear there are women and children being held hostage. Zealous tells the group to listen up because he has a plan, while Alf asks him to handle getting the bandits' attention. Zealous Merlin smirks at his students, telling them he'll go ahead, and if they don't hurry, he might just hunt down all the prey himself. The knights are fired up, shouting in unison as they prepare to take down the bandits and wonder where their captain is gone. Sylvester and Celestina watch their teacher walk away, remarking on how the bandits have essentially dug their own graves by attracting his attention. Meanwhile, at the bandit camp, the outlaws are laughing over the campfire, mocking a coachman they killed earlier for begging for his life. A bandit shouts for the women to be brought out, and a terrified young woman is grabbed by the hair as she begs them to stop. The bandit leader leers the captives, telling them he plans to sell them as slaves for a high price after his men have had their fun. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupts the scene, asking for directions and startling the bandits as a man in a white cloak walks right into their camp. Zealous Merlin stands before them with a bored expression, claiming he strayed off the main road and got lost. The bandit leader is annoyed, telling the newcomer to read the room, while the other bandits look on in confusion at the strange man. The mage doesn't back down, instead asking if the bandit would mind giving him 2 or 3 women for his experimental purposes. The leader eyes the gray robe, suspecting the man might be a dark mage, and decides he needs to be dealt with quickly. Thinking they found a kindred spirit, the bandits invite him to sit and drink, boasting about the high-quality goods they just stole. Zealous sits among them, apologizing for the intrusion as the captives watch the scene in silent, trembling horror. One of the bandits lunges with a knife, shouting that the only place the mage will be enjoying anything is in hell. The blade sinks into his shoulder, and he lets out a quiet as the bandit grins, thinking he scored a lethal blow. The bandits are shocked when the mage doesn't collapse, instead staggering slightly as he begins to move with unnatural speed. He turns to his attacker with a chilling smile, asking if they really thought he wouldn't notice such amateur signs. With a whispered, tearing wind blossom, he unleashes a blast of air magic that catches the bandits completely off guard. Cuts and slashes appear all over the men as the invisible wind tears through their ranks, leaving them screaming in pain. The bandit leader is terrified, realizing the man didn't even use a chant and wondering how a high-level mage could be in such a place. Zealous casually flicks his fingers, sending out precise mana strikes that knock the remaining bandits off their feet. The bandit leader asks if he is a national mage, but the protagonist simply replies that he doesn't really have to answer that. Panicking, the leader grabs a young boy hostage, holding a knife to his throat and warning the mage not to move. The instructor's expression turns cold as he tells the criminal to shut up, his hand beginning to glow with a dangerous light. He casts Stone Bullet, and the projectile slams into the bandit, forcing him to release the boy as he screams in agony. The child scrambles away to safety while the bandit leader collapses, clutching his wounded arm and crying out that hurts. Zealous Merlin steps on the fallen man's head, noting that it's about time as the bandit realizes his arm has gone completely numb. The knights finally show up to handle the cleanup, finding bandits already tied up and ready for transport. Zealous lets out a weary but satisfied smirk. For him, this whole ordeal is officially checkmate. The bandits are completely neutralized. They didn't really put up much of a fight against someone of Zealous's caliber. Zealous picks up a dropped staff, only for a young girl to pipe up and claim it. She's surprised he even knows it's a runewood staff. He recognizes the gear as a gacha item from the game. Iris confirms she got it as a newbie bonus, though she's confused by his modern terminology. The realization hits Iris like a truck. She asks if Zealous is actually another player from her old world. Iris explains she suddenly woke up in this world and ended up working as a mercenary just to get by. She's stuck wearing this impractical, sexy avatar outfit because it's the only high-level gear she owns that actually fits. Sitting by the campfire, she admits she was just trying to save up enough gold to buy some normal armor. Zealous watches her, realizing she's just a normal person trying to navigate this weird new reality. He decides to dig a little deeper, asking her what she really thinks about the state of this world. He points out that the systems here are an exact match for the game they play back home, right down to the broken balance. It's weird that nobody here questions the logic of their world, almost as if their thoughts are being subtly steered. Zealous theorizes that the game wasn't just a fantasy, it was a virtual copy of this actual world. If the game was based on this place, then the gods were basically using their reality as a playground for players. Zealous looks grim, realizing the implications of their lives being treated like a massive simulation. Iris isn't sweating the existential stuff. She's just thrilled that dungeons actually exist here. He offers to let her consult him if things get dicey, but Iris realizes she hasn't even heard his name yet. He introduces himself as Zealous, noting that his original Japanese name doesn't hold any weight in his life. Iris freezes. She knows that name. She's standing in front of the legendary Black Annihilator. Zealous cringes at the title, finding it way too edgy for a middle-aged guy like himself. Iris gives him a final, heartfelt thank you for the rescue as she prepares to rejoin her group. She runs off to the waiting carriage while Zealous takes a quiet moment to smoke under the moonlight. The carriage starts its bumpy journey, rattling loudly as they head away from the bandit camp. Inside, Iris lets out a massive sigh, finally feeling safe enough to drop her guard. Her companion, Rina, notices the heavy sigh and asks what's on her mind. Iris is convinced that the old man who saved them is actually the strongest mage in the entire world. Rina doesn't see the legend. She just sees an older guy who probably has a family waiting for him. Rina starts poking fun at Iris's small stature, teasing her about her childlike body. Iris explodes in frustration, shouting that she was way more mature-looking in the real world. The teasing continues as Rina jokes about Iris developing a crush on her rescuer. Back in his own carriage, Zealous can still hear the girls bickering in the distance. It's a noisy trip home. He leans back, already shifting his focus to the next lesson plan for his students. Sometime later, Zealous is back in his workshop, surrounded by stacks of old books and magical tools. He lays out a series of magic circles and materials, ready to start some advanced training. Zealous begins his work, focusing his mana to manipulate the physical properties of the materials. His fingers tap out a rhythm as he carefully injects mana into a solid block of metal. Under the pressure of his magic, the metal begins to warp and flow like liquid. He weaves the floating metal through the air, shaping it into delicate rings with just his thoughts. Zealous lets out a long sigh. Doing this manually is a lot more exhausting than just clicking a button in a menu. He finishes up the intricate magic formula, satisfied with the experimental design. He holds up the final product, a custom magic ring. It's hard work, but the results speak for themselves. 2 days after returning from the Farflan forest, everyone's back at the estate and things are finally settling down. Sylvester and Celestina are back at it, training harder than ever with a completely fresh outlook on combat. Duke Preston watches from the sidelines as the students charge toward a group of summoned stone golems. Zealous and the Duke discuss how much the kids have changed since they faced a real life-and-death battle in the woods. Zealous casually mentions he's keeping the golems at level 100, which is apparently an insane difficulty spike by this world standards. Celestina is focused and ready to show off her original magic, and the Duke is already imagining the shock on faces of those who look down on her. Sylvester takes a heavy hit from a golem, but instead of panicking, he keeps his cool and holds his ground. The siblings coordinate their attacks, dealing with the golem's tough defenses like a seasoned, high-level team. Sylvester's finally realized that every failure in training is just another chance to gain experience and grow stronger. They unleash their defensive magic, Divine Silver Wall, working together to block an incoming beam of energy. It's a perfectly synchronized strike. Sylvester goes in with a blade slash while Celestina backed him up with a shield bash. Their coordination is looking flawless as they hammer away at the stone monsters with everything they've got. Celestina piles magic barriers onto her shield to push forward, making her father beam with pride at her progress. Sylvester doesn't miss a beat, rushing in to follow up on the opening his sister created. He coats his sword in a magical barrier, using the extra force to cleave right through the golem's heavy frame. One final strike sends the golem's head flying, leaving Celestina a little stunned by the sheer power her brother is putting out. Suddenly, the remaining golem triggers an earthquake move, catching both students completely off guard. Zealous and Creston note how quickly the kids adjusted their casting speed to handle the surprise attack. Zealous calls an end to the session, leaving the two students slumped on the ground in total exhaustion. Creston praises them for their incredible progress, though the students are still processing how close they feel to death after every session. Zealous jokes that real monsters in the deep forest won't be this easy, leaving Sylvester feeling a bit pathetic again. Later, Sylvester is seen lurking around a hallway, clearly having something heavy on his mind. Zealous catches him in the act and asks the boy if he's always been this much of a moper. Sylvester gets defensive when Zealous teases him about being a bit too attached to his sister lately. He admits that he really just wants to apologize to her for everything he's done in the past. He explains that his family's pride as mages made it impossible for him to accept a sister who couldn't use magic. He's looking back on his younger self with total regret, especially how he treated Celestina and others like Elizarus. Zealous tells him that if he keeps wallowing forever, he'll miss his chance to ever make things right. He asks the boy a tough question. Can he really live with himself if he doesn't clear his conscience? Sylvester knows he can't forgive himself, so Zealous tells him the only way forward is to show his sister his sincere feelings. Sylvester takes it to heart, deciding right then and there to apologize using his own words. He finds Celestina taking a quiet moment alone on the balcony overlooking the estate. He approaches her cautiously, feeling the weight of the moment as he tries to take responsibility for his actions. Without warning, he drops into a deep bow, apologizing for everything he's put her through since they were kids. He explains how being the heir to the Duke filled his head with a twisted sense of pride and resentment. Now that he knows her lack of magic wasn't her fault, He realizes how wrong he was to take his frustration out on her. He keeps his head lowered, waiting for her reaction while she stands there in total shock. He shifts the conversation to Zealous' magic, wondering what she thinks about their teacher's incredible power. Celestina recalls Zealous' warning that indulging in too much power can lead to creating something truly heinous. She's made up her mind. She wants to use her magic to create something that actually makes people happy. Sylvester feels the same, vowing to use his own strength to protect the people he was born to lead. He's fully embraced his duty as a nobleman, even if the road ahead is dangerous enough to kill him. Sylvester explains that while magic can enrich lives, he's chosen the path of a protector, dedicated to defending people and their property. Celestina listens in silence, finally understanding the weight her brother has been carrying and the difficult road he's chosen to walk. She realizes she was wrong to think he just hated her. He resented her because he felt she couldn't protect the people they were born to lead. In a soft, trembling voice, Celestina finally tells him the words he never expected to hear. She forgives him. Sylvester is visibly moved, thanking his sister for her forgiveness as the tension between them finally begins to melt away. He tells her that he'll join the military after graduation, but she should take her time and find her own true purpose in the world. Celestina is surprised by his sudden warmth, her eyes wide as she processes this new, supportive version of her brother. Sylvester gives her a genuine, rare smile, reminding her that there's no need to rush her decision. Celestina smiles back, a heavy weight lifting from her shoulders as they finally start to act like real siblings again. The two stand together on the balcony, watching the horizon as their summer vacation and their training come to a close. As they prepare to leave, Duke Creston admits he's feeling a little lonely, watching his children get ready to head back to the academy. Sylvester is still sighing about the return to school, while Celestina wonders why he's so depressed about going back. Sylvester half-jokingly asks his grandfather if he can just drop out and stay to learn from Zealous instead. Zealous steps in with a smirk, telling the boy he shouldn't talk about dropping out so easily after all they've been through. Zealous reaches into his cloak, pulling out some gleaming items, his parting gifts for his two star pupils. He presents them with custom-made magical mediums, a bracelet for Celestina and rings for Sylvester, to replace their traditional wands. Zealous explains that in this world, receiving a tool from your master is the ultimate sign of being a full-fledged mage. Sylvester is confused why there are two rings, and Zealous tells him to pass one on to his younger brother later. To top it off, Zealous gives them some homework. They're tasked with improving the efficiency of the high-level magic they learned. Sylvester and Celestina are practically glowing with excitement, realizing they've just been handed some of the strongest magical tools in existence. Zealous watches them, hoping his excuse for more research will help push them to even greater heights. The two students feel the weight of the responsibility, but they're more than ready to take on the challenge. They're fired up and shouting their commitment, ready to prove themselves once they're back at the academy. Zealous is a bit taken aback by their sudden burst of intense motivation, not quite realizing how much his approval means to them. The two siblings compete to see who will be first to finish the homework as they climb into their carriage. They wave goodbye to the professor, promising to stay well and look forward to sending him their progress reports. As the carriage rattles away, Creston and Zealous watch them go, both looking forward to seeing what the future holds for the pair. With the students gone, Zealous realizes he's basically jobless again, and he wonders what his next move in this new world should be. It's been 3 days since the students, Celestina and Sylvester, headed off to the capital. Zealous watched them go, knowing his time as their tutor was officially over. Suddenly unemployed again, he figures it's time to find some new work. But something on the ground catches his eye. To the locals, this is just a useless weed. But to someone from Japan, this is the foundation of life itself. Zealous can't believe he found rice growing in the wild. An old villager thinks he's crazy for getting excited over a weed, but Zealous is already dreaming of egg on rice. He vows to revive rice culture right here. He stops by the church to see Lazarus and the kids. After some small talk, he gets straight to the point. He needs to find some eggs. Lazarus explains that eggs are a luxury item around here. They're so rare that she's never even tasted one herself. If they're that hard to find, Zealous decides he'll just buy chicken and raise it. Lazarus looks at him like he's lost his mind. She tells him about the wild cocoa, a ferocious bird that's basically a monster. Apparently, they eventually evolve into cockatrices. Since the egg situation is a bust, he asks about places to mine for metal. Lazarus feels bad. She can't be more helpful. She points him toward an abandoned mine north of the city. It's about a half-day trek from here. Lazarus warns him that the place is crawling with dangerous monsters. Zealous isn't worried. Unless a demon king is waiting inside, he's confident he'll be fine. He heads out, leaving the group behind. Lazarus watches him walk away with a strange look in her eyes. Her heart starts pounding, and the kids immediately start teasing her about having a crush. She tries to hide her blushing face, but they aren't buying it. On the outskirts of Center City, Zealous finds a bar known for being a hub of information. The place is packed with rowdy adventurers, and there isn't a single seat left. He's about to leave when someone calls out to him. It's Iris, the pink-haired she met before. She's sitting with two other women and waves him over. Iris is happy to see him, but her friend Rina is more interested in the food she's scarfing down. Both of them recognize him as the guy who helped out the other day. The third member of the group, a serious mercenary named Jean, isn't as welcoming. She stares him down, thinking he looks incredibly shady. Iris tells Jean to relax, explaining that this shady guy saved them from bandits. She drags Zealous over to join them at the table. Zealous mentions he's heading to the abandoned mine for metal. Jean thinks he's an amateur and warns him that it's a death trap full of kobolds and golems. She tells him flat out to give up on the idea. Zealous just listens, keeping his usual tired expression. He assures her he knows what he's getting into. He's not planning to lower his guard for a second. Iris thinks it's the perfect time to team up. They were looking for another member anyway, and she thinks the more the merrier. Rina is all for it, feeling safer with someone strong along. Plus, Jean mentioned wanting a new sword, so the metal hunt works for everyone. Jean is still skeptical, asking why they're even bothering to take an old man. Zealous just shrugged it off, saying it's fine by him if they don't want him. Zealous mentions he's a man too, and he might even turn into a beast if he's around a woman as attractive as her. He says it with a completely straight face. Iris and Rina immediately start poking fun at Jean. They laugh about her being called attractive, while Zealous just watches them act like kids. Jean's brain practically short-circuits. She turns bright red, screaming in shock that he actually called her attractive. Zealous stays calm, while the girls keep teasing their flustered friend. He's not bothered by the chaos at all. Jean is fuming, accusing the old man of hitting on her. Rina just giggles, thinking it's great that someone finally complimented her. Iris tells her to just suck it up for a couple of days. She knows Zealous is more skilled than anyone else here. With the group officially formed, the deal is settled. They're all heading to the mine, much to Jean's vocal annoyance. The next morning, they're out in the forest. Iris asks him what he actually plans to do with all the metal he's going to mine. Zealous tells her he wants to build a silo to store all the rice he plans to grow. Iris has no idea why he's so obsessed with a weed. He gets a faraway look, explaining that rice is his soul food. He's determined to recreate the perfect egg-on-rice dish. Iris reminds him that the chickens around here aren't exactly friendly. She's surprised he's so casual about it after everything he survived. Zealous starts telling horror stories about the monsters he's encountered, like goblin sex monkeys. It's so disturbing that the girls beg him to stop for the sake of their morale. Changing the subject, Iris asks if he's officially jobless now. Zealous admits it's true, and he looks a little hurt by how bluntly she put it. He explains that his tutoring gig was only ever meant for the summer. Now that school is back in session, he's not allowed at the academy. He gazes up at the sky, wondering how his students are holding up without him. He genuinely hopes they're doing well. They finally arrive at Ahan Village, the last stop before the mine. The place is bustling with all kinds of people. Zealous notices how crowded it is. Jean explains that most people come here to level up or hunt for precious metals, but they all need an escort to survive the mine. Back at the village, a group of guys is cornering a young girl named Christine. She's small with reddish-brown hair and a messy cowlick, clutching a sword they're trying to take from her. They think she's just an inexperienced kid who has no business holding a weapon. Christine shouts that the sword is a memento from her father, and she'll never give it to anyone. The guys aren't listening, telling her they'll just use it in her place since she doesn't know what she's doing. One of the jerks just reaches out and snatches the blade right out of her hands. He laughs, thinking they've just scored a high-quality sword for themselves. Watching from the sidelines, Zealous activates his appraisal skill. He sees the truth. It's an inferior mithril sword, heavily cracked and practically useless for a real fight. He knows that bad guys always seem to cluster together. The guy who stole it realizes it's junk and tosses it back at Christine like it's trash. He tells her he has no use for her or the broken sword and tells her to get lost. Zealous steps in, telling the guys they wouldn't be able to use that sword even if they wanted to. He warns them that if they keep trying to fight with it, they'll end up dead. The guy just scoffs, calling Zealous a useless mage who probably can't even lift a sword, let alone use one. He isn't taking the middle-aged man seriously at all. He starts swinging his own sword around, bragging that he could easily use it on Zealous. It's all talk, but he's looking for a fight. Before the guy can even finish his sentence, Zealous is right in his face. He's moved so fast it's basically a blur, and the guy's frozen in terror. Zealous holds a blade to the guy's neck and tells him he's actually much better with a sword than he is with magic. The atmosphere suddenly gets very cold. He looks the guy dead in the eye and tells him that if he can't even tell the difference in their strength, he's not going to live very long anyway. Zealous gives him final choice. Walk away now or stay and die. He's perfectly calm, which makes the threat 100 times scarier. The bully immediately crumbles, sweating buckets as he stammers out an apology. Zealous just gives him a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. Zealous politely asks him to hand back the girl's sword and get lost. The guy doesn't need to be told twice, scurrying away with his friends. With the jerks gone, Christine is overwhelmed. She thanks Zealous over and over, clutching the memento from her father. She bows deeply, truly thankful that someone stood up for her and saved the only thing she had left of her family. Zealous asks to borrow the sword for a second, promising he'll try to repair it. Christine is confused, but she hands over. He tells her she's probably here to find materials for a new sword, but the old one won't last another trip into the mine. He wants to extend its life just a bit longer so she stays safe. He tells her he's just being a nosy old man and to keep a close eye on what he's about to do. He isn't used to doing things half-heartedly. Zealous places the sword down on a magic circle he's drawn on the ground and tells her to leave the rest to him. He activates his appraisal skill again, this time analyzing the exact metal composition: 45% iron, 23% Damascus, and 32% mithril. He's already building a magic formula in his head. He starts a magic forge, and the sound of screeching metal fills the air as the circle glows bright. Christine can only watch in absolute awe as the sword begins to change. After a moment, it's done. He hands it back, warning her that it's only a temporary fix and the metal is just barely held together. He tells her not to get overconfident. Christine is amazed, but she understands. She tells him she won't keep using it forever and will definitely work hard to get a sword of her own. She bows one last time, thanking him from the bottom of her heart before heading off on her own way. As she walks away, Zealous waves goodbye, looking like a kind old man. But behind him, Iris and Rena are giving him a total trash look. Iris and Rena joke that he's a quick worker when it comes to women, even if they're just kids. Zealous starts panicking, trying to explain he was just being helpful, but they aren't letting him off the hook. Zealous is sweating buckets, insisting he was just meddling to help the kid. Iris and Rena just keep staring him down with skeptical looks. Over where the bullies were, one of them suddenly realizes that the kid they were picking on was actually a girl. He looks completely horrified by the realization. They realize they just committed the ultimate adventurous sin. Meanwhile, Zealous claps his hands to change the subject and get everyone moving toward the mines. He really wants to avoid any more drama. The group heads off, each with their own goals, as they approach the dark entrance of the abandoned mine. Zealous leads the way, still feeling the heat from the girl's stares. Deep inside the tunnels, we see Christine again, sweating as she swings a pickaxe. She admits to herself that mining is way tougher than it looked from the outside. Her companions, who look like they've recovered from their earlier encounter, tell her digging is hard work for men and she shouldn't push herself too much. They remind her she's the leader of the Elwell family and it's only natural for them to protect her. Christine just gives a quiet thanks, looking a bit overwhelmed by the responsibility. Christine can't stop thinking about the amazing mage who helped her. Her companions, on the other hand, are still bitter and vow to slay the ruffian the next time they find him. They think what he did was a lifetime mistake. One of them admitted that the guy had tremendous skill, maybe even more than her father. Christine just listens silently, her thoughts drifting back to the magical forge he created. She looks at her pickaxe, hoping to find enough or to make a sword that can live up to the mage's expectations. They decide to wrap things up for the day and head home. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes through the tunnel. Christine is caught completely off guard, and the ground starts shaking violently. Something is coming. A monster shrieks from the darkness, lunging out of the shadows. Christine is terrified, frozen in place as the beast attacks. Her companions can only shout in panic. Elsewhere in the mine, Zealous's group is making progress toward the mining area. He stops suddenly, sensing something with his detection magic. Something is definitely wrong. He tells the group there are 4 creatures ahead, and he'll take care of them quickly. He readies a spell called Zone Balize, his hand glowing with magical energy. A massive blast of energy slams into the monsters, sending them flying with a pained screech. Zealous doesn't even break a sweat, looking completely unbothered by the fight. The group is suddenly surrounded by a pack of kobolds, their snarls echoing through the dark tunnel. The wolf-like creatures brandish bows and primitive weapons, ready to strike. Jean immediately takes charge, shouting for Rena and Iris to get ready. Iris is eager to help, promising to back them up with her magic as they prepare to defend themselves. Zealous remains incredibly calm, telling the girls he'll take care of the enemies higher up while they handle the ones on the ground. The sudden change in his demeanor catches them off guard. Without another word, Zealous leaps into action, his movements a blur as he chants a spell called Wings of the Bird of Darkness. He's closing the distance with the archers in a split second. Zealous is like a force of nature, moving with a grace and speed that seems impossible for a middle-aged mage. He's already in the middle of the pack, focused and ready to strike. He takes down the kobolds one by one with precision strikes. His movements so fast the creatures barely have time to yelp before they're neutralized. It's a masterclass in close-quarters combat. Even when they try to surround him, Zealous just parries their attacks and counters with ease. He's completely in control of the battlefield, not letting a single monster get past him. The kobolds keep coming, but it doesn't matter. Zealous is a whirlwind of steel and magic, moving through the tunnel like a shadow and leaving a trail of defeated monsters in his wake. Zealous gives a cold, determined look as he prepares a high-level spell. A crackling sound fills the air as black energy begins to gather around his hand. Black thunder, he mutters. A massive bolt of dark lightning erupts from his hand, tearing through the cave and vaporizing the remaining kobolds in an instant. The power behind the spell is absolutely staggering. As the dust settles, the girls are left staring in total shock. Zealous just stands there, perfectly fine, while the corpses of monsters disintegrate around him. The sound of his footsteps is the only thing heard in the silence. Iris can't believe her eyes, wondering how a mage can fight so well in close combat. Jean is equally impressed, noting that he's more like a flashy assassin than a traditional mage, going all out instead of hiding. Jean tells everyone to snap out of it, because there are still more monsters coming. Iris looks a bit worried, thinking Zealous might just finish them all off before they even get a chance to act. Another wave of monsters charges in, and Zealous wastes no time, casting Zombies. The area is flooded with magical energy, slowing down the attackers and giving the others a clear opening. Rena and Jean dive into the fray, taking down the weakened monsters with ease. They're putting up a good fight, but the sheer number of creatures is still a bit much to handle. Zealous watches them for a moment, deciding to use this opportunity to let them level up. He stays on guard, however, prepared for the possibility of an ambush from deeper within the cave. Once the battle is finally over, Iris is relieved to see they took care of all of them. Zealous then says something strange. He's going to burn the corpses, even though they're already disappearing. A strange glow fills the room as the monster remains start to vanish into the ground itself. It's a bizarre sight, and even Zealous looks a bit surprised by what's happening. Iris points out the monsters didn't just die. They vanished and left behind magic stones. Zealous realizes what's going on, and his expression turns very serious. I see, he says quietly. Is this dungeon evolving? Zealous explains that the dungeon itself is essentially a field-type monster. Iris is confused by the term, but he starts to break down what's really going on in the mine. He tells them that by absorbing souls or bodies, the dungeon converts them into magical power to summon even stronger demons. It's like the mine is the belly of a giant creature, constantly feeding and growing. He explains that the dungeon provides a magical supply to the demons, allowing them to reproduce endlessly. When they become too numerous, they're released into the open in a phenomenon called a stampede. Iris can only listen in wide-eyed horror. Zealous explains that if they don't clear the lower levels, those demons will eventually swarm the village. The mercenaries are bug-eyed. Jean asks if he's actually serious about going all the way to the deepest part. He just casually mentions they're going to wipe the whole place clean. Iris starts sweating buckets. She begs him to take it easy so he doesn't bring the entire dungeon down on their heads. She tells the others that guys this strong are either worshipped or feared, and she's leaning toward the latter. The group finally reaches the entrance of a dark, jagged tunnel and starts the descent. Deep inside, Zealous stops. He can hear the sound of metal clashing against stone further in. He points the way as a chorus of screams starts echoing through the shafts. They find a group of knights pinned down by spiders. They're frantically shouting for a girl named Christine. Giant, multi-eyed spiders crawl out of the shadows, hissing as they swarm the floor. The girls don't hesitate. Jean yells for Iris to back her up as she rushes into the fray. Iris slams a spider with a rock blast, while Jean cleaves through another one with her sword. The fight's over fast. A knight wheezes out the news that Christine fell down a massive trap hole. Zealous gets a serious look. If she hit the bottom level, they're officially racing against the clock to save her. He stands right at the edge of the pit. The knight says they can't open it, but Zealous has other plans. He just casually steps off the ledge. The girls lose their minds as he disappears into the darkness. Zealous doesn't just fall. He lands on magical platforms like they're stairs, dropping down at his own pace. He looks over the edge and sees a massive cavern floor covered in giant, writhing sandworms. He mutters that this looks like an underground world from some old movie. The worms are everywhere. Then he hears it. A swarm of bats starts shrieking as they circle above him. He spots a splash of red on the rocks. There she is, clinging to the wall. It's Christine. She's huddled on a tiny ledge while the bats dive bomb her from every angle. She tries to cover her head, but the bats are relentless. She knows she can't hold on much longer. Terrified, she calls out for her father to save her as another bat swoops in for the kill. Her grip finally gives out. She slips off the ledge and starts plummeting toward the worms. She screams for her parents, closing her eyes as the floor rushes up to meet her. Thinking she's about to become worm food, she prepares for the end. Suddenly, she feels a thud and a pair of arms catching her midair. Zealous caught her. He's just standing there on a floating magic circle, looking totally unbothered. He looks her in the eye and tells her it was a nice catch, though he almost didn't make it. Christine is staring at him in total shock. He tells her to quit moving around before they both fall. He brings her down to solid ground and checks for injuries, mentioning that her friends are worried sick. She stammers out a thank you and asks for his name. He just tells her to call him Zealous. He looks at the worms and decides they need to be eradicated. Christine has no idea what that word actually entails. Zealous tosses a magic cube into the air and calls out his Purgatory Flame Destroyer spell. The entire cavern vanishes behind a massive wall of fire that incinerates everything in a split second. The worms are toast, but now the heat is so intense that Zealous realizes they might actually melt. He quickly throws up 50 layers of ice walls to keep them from being cooked alive. Even with the ice, it's still way too hot. He uses Gaia control to force the rocks to cool down. The heat is so high that the cavern floor literally starts to melt into liquid stone. To put out the fire for good, he unleashes Cositis to flash freeze the entire area. He tops it off with a wind spell to cool the air. Christine stands there, jaw dropped at the overkill. After the massive blast of fire and ice, the dust starts to settle in the cavern. The ground is still sizzling and melting from the sheer intensity of the spell. Zealous looks back at the smoking crater and wonders if he might have overdone it just a little. Christine is staring at him with her jaw on the floor. She realizes that kind of eradication magic shouldn't even exist yet, and she demands to know who he actually is. Zealous gets a distant look in his eyes. He's been called the Eradicator before, and it seems that title followed him even to this world. He just sighs and plays it off, telling her he's just a boring, unemployed old man. He suggests they finally head back up to the surface, but Christine points out they're miles underground with no way out. Zealous doesn't care about gravity. He just scoops her up and takes off on a magic circle, leaving her screaming as they fly through the air. A bit later, they're walking through the upper tunnels. Christine starts moping about how weak she is and how she'll just get in his way. Zealous asks why she doesn't just use magic. She tells him she knows the spells, they just never actually work for her. He realizes her problem is a lot like one of his old students. He asks if she'd actually like to be able to use it. He pulls out a scroll and says he's tweaked the logic of a basic spell to make it easier to cast. He tells her it's worth a shot since things down here are pretty much life or death anyway. She takes a deep breath and recites the chant for a simple light spell. A small flame appears right in her hand. She's absolutely stunned that it actually worked. Zealous smirks, mentioning that he taught the exact same thing to another student he used to have. Their training session is interrupted when a massive level 103 war ant crawls out of the darkness, clicking its giant mandibles. Zealous casually asks if she wants to take a crack at it, since it's only a single monster. Christine is practically vibrating with fear at the level gap. He pulls out a sleek katana and tells her to use it. It's a magically remodeled sword he designed himself. He hands it over, and she nearly drops it from the weight. He tells her he'll pin the monster down so she can get a clean hit. He flashes a plasma blind spell to stun the ant, and Christine charges in with everything she's got. She swings the heavy blade, and the impact triggers a massive explosion that rocks the entire tunnel. The monster is completely vaporized. The sword is so sharp and powerful it can cut through metal like it's nothing. Christine is left shaking from the raw power she just unleashed. Zealous makes a mental note to be a bit more careful with his weapon designs. The sudden jump from level 20 to level 81 is too much for her body to handle, and she passes out right there. Zealous catches her and carries her on his back, joking to himself that it probably looks like he's kidnapping her. Meanwhile, at the upper levels, the rest of the party is having a rough time against a never-ending swarm of ants. The Night Leader, a man with short black hair and silver armor, shouts for everyone to stay focused as they're being pushed back. The Knights are terrified that something happened to Christine down in the lower depths. Iris jumps in and blasts the swarm with an aqua jet to give them some breathing room. Jean and Rena join the defensive line. Jean tells them to concentrate on what's in front of them, or they're dead meat. They start working together as a team, thanking the mercenaries for stepping in to help. But for every ant they kill, 3 more seem to take its place. The swarm is completely overwhelming. The group realizes the dungeon's power is amping up, and there's no end in sight. Suddenly, Iris hears a strange rumbling coming from the pit below. A massive shockwave of wind explodes upward, sending the entire ant swarm flying like ragdolls. Everyone stands there in shock as the enemies are cleared out in a single second. Zealous strolls out of the shadows with Christine on his back, greeting everyone as if he just went for a casual walk. Iris and the Knights can barely process that he's actually back with the missing girl. Sometime later, things have settled down and the group is back in the safety of a town inn. Christine finally snaps awake in a warm bed. Her first thought is to ask where Zealous went. She practically leaps out of bed and runs down the stairs, where she's met by a very relieved Night Leader. Christine snaps to attention, her first thought being to find the man who saved her. By the way, Mr. Zealous, where is he? She asks, realizing she hasn't thanked him properly. The Night Leader and the other girls look at each other. They mention that they haven't seen the mage around the inn either and suggest asking the mercenary group. Rena and Jean, sitting at a nearby table, drop the news. He went back home last night, they say casually, shocking everyone else. It's at least half a day's walk to the next town, Sander. Jean chuckles, knowing Zealous can take care of himself even if bandits show up. Christine's heart sinks. He saved her life and taught her magic, yet she didn't get a chance to say a single word of gratitude. The Night Leader tries to comfort her, but the mercenaries tell her not to be too hard on herself. They mention that since he's a wanderer, they're bound to run into him again sooner or later. Christine looks off in the distance, wondering if their paths will really cross once more. She clenches her fists in a silent vow. I will definitely repay you for this favor. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the bustling streets of Sandra City. Zealous is walking around, whistling a tune. He's thinking about how much those magic stones from the dungeon will sell for and plans to buy a dryer and a cold cellar. He gets an excited look on his face. Once he has the equipment, he can finally introduce a proper rice culture to this world. Egg on rice, here I come. He decides to stop by the local church first, his bag full of goodies. Suddenly, he hears screams coming from the forest path. It's just the local kids holding up some wriggling mandragoras and scaring the daylights out of a young girl. They're thrilled to see the old man back. Zealous hands out some fried bread as gifts, and the children cheer with joy. Lazarus, the kind-hearted nun, steps out of the church, her eyes widening in surprise. "Mr. Zealous." She rushes over with a worried expression, asking if he's hurt and welcoming him home. Zealous is momentarily stunned by her genuine concern, his face flushing slightly. He thinks back to his previous world, where he was always alone with no one to greet him at the end of the day. It's nice when someone welcomes you back. He gives a humble bow, apologizing for worrying her and officially announcing his return. Lazarus smiles warmly, saying she's always happy to help him with anything. Zealous can't help but tease her, saying he'd be thrilled if a beautiful woman like her approached him. She blushes and tells him to stop picking on her, but the atmosphere between them remains sweet as he takes his leave. As Zealous walks away, the kids peek from the church, teasing Lazarus that she's clearly in love. She just watches him go, relieved he's safe. We start at the Istam Magic Academy, a prestigious school with 3 centuries of history. Celestina rolls up to the gates, looking pretty miserable about being back. Her maid, Mishka, tells her she'd better get ready for the term. As soon as she steps out, the gossip starts. The other students are already mocking her as the incompetent girl who's returned. They whisper about how she only got in because of her father's connections. Celestina just keeps walking, trying to ignore them. Mishka tells her not to let it get to her. Celestina vows to graduate as a proper mage to honor the professor who trained her. Class is in session for Magic Boot Camp. The instructor sets up a target and tells everyone they'll be shooting fireballs today. Celestina watches the others cast, wishing she were back fighting golems instead of doing this boring stuff. Then, Karasti D. St. Germain pops up, surprised that Celestina is still at the academy. She bluntly asks if Celestina can even use magic now, since everyone says she's useless. Celestina mentions she spent her summer training with an acquaintance of her grandfather. She has a quick flashback of the hell Zealous put her through, like fighting mud golems for 3 hours straight. Karasti is shocked. She's never heard of a mage who could keep control of a golem for that long. She wants to meet him, but Celestina lies and says he's just a traveler who isn't interested in power. She knows if anyone finds out her teacher is actually a great sage, the whole country will be trying to scout him. The instructor calls her name next. Karasti cheers her on while the rest of the class waits for a show. The guys in the back are already laughing, just waiting for her to fail like she always does. Celestina prepares a small sphere of flame, without even using a chant. The instructor is completely confused, and she just shouts fire and launches it at the dummy. A massive explosion hits the target dead on. The dummy is gone. Everyone else is just standing there with their mouths open. The class is stunned that a basic fireball could have that much power. Celestina looks at her hand, realizing just how much she improved during her training. She smiles, knowing she's still got a long way to go if she ever wants to catch up to the professor. Meanwhile, over at the separate campus, a strategy meeting is going on. The students are moving pieces on a board, acting like soldiers are just pawns in their little game. Sylvester sits there listening, thinking about how these guys have zero real combat experience. One of the students asks for his opinion on their strategy. Sylvester tells them war isn't just for mages, and if they can't work with the knights, the whole talk is a waste of time. He points at the board, noting that the enemy in their head is moving way too slowly. He questions why they always assume both sides will have the same strength. The others start arguing, saying that things like weather and politics are what really matter. Sylvester shuts them down, saying they're just debating a victory they've already decided on. He poses a real-world scenario. A neighbor country hit by famine launches a massive, desperate invasion. He knocks over all their pieces, asking what they do if an army 10 times their size caught them by surprise. Samtroll Iva Whistler slams the table, yelling that something like that is theoretically impossible. Sylvester just asks why. From an enemy's point of view, plundering during famine is the most logical move. He suggests holding Fort Laos and drawing them in to destroy them one by one as they scatter. Samtroll calls it nonsense, wondering why high-tier mages like them would ever go to the front lines. Sylvester is appalled. He thought they were training to fight for the people, not hide behind them. Samtroll mocks him, saying he's just talking big for someone who hasn't been to war. Sylvester fires back. He hasn't been to war, but he has actual combat experience from 4-day survival trip in the Farfland forests. He remembers those days clearly. He knows that in a real fight, survival skills matter way more than any textbook knowledge. Sylvester recalls the wisdom of his master. A mage who can't handle a melee fight is just a dead man walking. Samtroll Iva Whistler slams the table, furious that Sylvester is talking down to their faction and their perfect wide-range annihilation magic. Sylvester points out that their trump card spell is useless if it consumes so much mana that nobody can actually cast it. He tells Sam Troll to stop trying to do things he's not capable of, which just makes the arrogant noble lose his mind even more. Sylvester stays calm, telling him that he's speaking not just for a faction, but as a mage with the weight of the country on his shoulders. He drops a final warning that the academy doesn't belong to them alone, and they need to start being aware of that. Sam Troll is left trembling with rage, unable to believe he just got schooled by someone he thought he had under control. Sylvester decides he's had enough of the nonsense and heads back to the dorm. Sam Troll's lackeys are baffled, wondering if their brainwashing spell is losing its effect on him. They realize that whoever Sylvester is calling his master must have had a massive influence on his personality. They're frustrated that their plan to turn him into a mindless puppet was going so well until now. Later, in the academy storage room, Sylvester finds his brother Croesus buried in research about magic runes. Croesus is trying to figure out why runes that shouldn't work together suddenly make sense when connected in a specific way. He's surprised to see his brother in the library, noting that Sylvester usually avoids books like the plague. He jokes that Sylvester must have had a personality change, while a little doodle of Sylvester swinging a sword reminds us of his old self. Sylvester just tells him that he's actually here for some homework his master gave him. He explains that their master ordered him to study the magic of the hidden treasures, and that Celestina is already the brightest student in the academy. Croesus is stunned. He can't believe their little sister is suddenly a magic genius, and he wants to know who taught them. Sylvester whispers that they were mentored by a mysterious mage during summer vacation. He tells the story of how their grandfather and Celestina were attacked by bandits, and it was this master who saved them. He warns Croesus that this man is a great sage, and if word got out, the nobles and even the king would be hunting him down. Since the master wants a quiet life, they have to keep his identity a total secret. He tells Croesus to be careful, as he's heading down the same path as their master and might create something truly dangerous. The wide-range annihilation magic Sam Troll was bragging about, Master can already use that with zero effort. Croesus finds it hard to believe someone like that actually exists in their world. Sylvester tosses him a small gift, saying it's from the master himself. He explains that it's a magical medium, a substitute for a wand, and the master wants Croesus to test it out. Croesus is mesmerized by the ring, noting that it's made of pure mithril with incredible craftsmanship. Sylvester jokes that he's actually glad to be doing this homework, because it means he doesn't have to go back to those stupid faction meetings. He laughs, saying he's forever grateful to his master for changing his life. Croesus is touched, seeing his brother able to laugh so genuinely for the first time in a while. He realizes that this master has changed not just Celestina, but Sylvester as well. He's officially very interested in meeting this great sage. But the exact same time as they're thinking about him, Zealous is having a total Showtime moment while dancing with some dwarves. For various reasons, he's apparently spent his time building bridges and dancing with the local dwarf population. But his dreams quickly shift back to the trauma of his past life in Japan, where his company abandoned him. He remembers the day he found out his colleagues had stolen data from his computer without his permission. And his sister showed up, not to help, but to demand he lend her 500,000 yen just because he was well paid. But he told her he didn't have that kind of money. She turned on him, calling him a heartless bastard. He finally snapped, yelling at her to get out of his house and never show her face again. Zealous wakes up in a cold sweat, realizing it was all just a nightmare from a past he's left behind. Zealous wakes up with a heavy sigh, still shaken by the vivid nightmare of his past life's betrayals. Trying to clear his head, he heads out to the fields, using wind cutter magic to harvest crops with effortless precision. The local orphans arrive to help, fascinated by the strange wooden threshing machine Zealous has set up. Lazarus looks at the harvested stalks skeptically, wondering if this rice weed is actually edible. Zealous inspects the grain, realizing he'll need to do some serious sorting while a mysterious girl plays enthusiastically with a machine in the background. He promises the kids a feast at the dining hall if they help him carry the harvest back. Lazarus teases him for bribing them with food, but the kids are already cheering for the meat they're about to eat. Zealous is just happy that the harvest is stable, already imagining the egg on rice and sake he can eventually make. They all head toward the dining hall, the children's stomachs growling with anticipation. Lazarus introduces a new face, a beautiful blonde elf who's been living at the nursing home. Zealous asks if she's a high elf, and Lazarus explains they kept her hidden because slave traders would pay a fortune for her. Elves are a rare and prized race, often hunted by those looking to profit from their extraordinary value. The girl, Keed Hafen, formally introduces herself with a polite bow. She senses Zealous's hidden strength and immediately asks the plain mage for his guidance. Zealous is confused, wondering if she wants to learn magic, but Keed declares she wants to master the sword. She explains that her homeland in the Far East was so violent that survival was impossible without a blade in hand. Keed even challenges him to a sparring match, making Zealous sigh as his student count continues to grow. The group finally sits down, ordering a variety of hearty lunch sets. Everyone digs in, the sounds of chewing and happy eating filling the room. Lazarus tells the messy children to learn from Keed, who is expertly using chopsticks to eat. Suddenly, Iris and Jean appear, looking absolutely haggard and covered in dirt. Jean slumped over, admitting they failed their mission against a foe she calls strong. She shows her broken sword, devastated that her new weapon was shattered so easily. The mighty foe turns out to be the wild Coco, essentially a giant, hyper-aggressive chicken that broke their formation. Jean is in a deep depression because she spent all her savings on that mithril blade. Zealous offers to take a look and see if he can fix the rework, making Jean feel both guilty and hopeful. Zealous thinks it's incredibly suspicious for a mithril sword to break from a mere hen's kick. He decides to activate his appraisal skill to see what the blade is really made of. The truth is brutal. The appraisal reveals it's a scrap metal greatsword with 0 mithril content. Jean has been scammed. Zealous breaks the bad news. The sword is a complete fake. Jean is fuming because she provided the mithril for it herself. An adventurer nearby overhears and starts panicking. Turns out that same blacksmith made gear for him too. Zealous takes a look at the guy's weapon. Yep, more garbage. This guy's running a total scam shop. The crowd is officially reaching its breaking point. They're ready to head down there and tear the place apart. Jean and a mob bolt for the blacksmith's workshop. Zealous watches them go, knowing this is about to get messy. He tells Keed he'll follow them to make sure things don't get completely out of hand. He sells his tab at the restaurant first. No point in leaving a meal unpaid, even during a riot. He tracks the group down to a narrow back alley where Iris is already waiting. They reach the back of the shop. Jean is more worried about her stolen mithril than the money she lost. A crowd has already gathered at the front, screaming at the blacksmith through the door. The blacksmith tries to play it cool, demanding proof he's a fraud. One guy suggests they just melt the sword down right there. If there's no mithril in it, the guy is toast. The smith tells them to do whatever they want, but he won't let them step foot in his workshop. While the mob is busy at the front, a couple of thugs try to sneak crates out the back door. Iris catches them red-handed. Jean charges in, demanding her materials back. She's not letting them escape with the evidence. The thugs realize they've been spotted and decide to get aggressive. One of them takes a hit to the head out of nowhere. He didn't even see what happened. Zealous just gives a thumbs up. He literally just flicked a small rock with enough force to drop the guy. The thugs are baffled. Since when do mages have high-level martial arts skills? Zealous doesn't care if it makes sense to them. He's just having a little fun. The blacksmith himself storms out, yelling at his guys for being too slow with the crates. He tries to act tough, claiming those crates are for the local lord and messing with them will end badly. Zealous calls his bluff. Turns out, he used to be the tutor for that lord's kids. The smith starts sweating. Threatening people in the name of a noble is a fast way to get executed. One of the crates drops and rolls open, spilling out a bunch of unrefined magic stones. Zealous lays it out. The guy was just hoarding raw materials to sell on the black market instead of making actual products. The smith realizes he's cornered and lunges at Zealous with a knife. Zealous doesn't even flinch. He catches the guy's arm and prepares to end this. A quick slam to the ground, and the scammer is gasping for air. One final punch to the gut, and it's lights out for the blacksmith. His goons don't stick around to help him up. Zealous takes a puff of his smoke while the girls watch him work. Jean's a bit annoyed he stole the show. Zealous just pivots to his next goal, hunting some mutant chickens for their eggs. Jean's happy to have her mithril back, but Zealous is clearly only thinking about his future breakfast. Back at his workshop, he starts tinkering with a weird machine involving magic stones. A few days later, the whole group shows up at his place, including the elf Keed. They're all pretty impressed with the nice house he's managed to build for himself. He shows off his new invention. It's not a weapon, it's just a machine to hull rice. He tells Jean to hand over a broken blade, so he can finally make her a real one. He draws some alchemy circles on the ground. Alchemy is way faster than standard blacksmithing. He asks what she's looking for. Just a simple fire element sword, nothing too flashy. Zealous gets serious. It's time to see what a great sage can do with some scrap metal. The alchemy circle flares up as the metal begins to reshape itself under his command. Jean and Lazarus find out they have a lot in common. They actually grew up in the same orphanage before going their separate ways. Jean is amazed that magic can handle something as physically demanding as blacksmithing. She thanks Lazarus for all the time she healed her up when they were kids. Anytime Jean got into trouble, Lazarus was there. Zealous finishes the alchemy process. The new sword is finally ready for action. Jean thinks the blade looks way better than it used to, though it's still pretty warm to the touch. She prepares to give her brand new weapon a test run. It feels perfect in her hand. She's not worried about facing off against those mutant chickens anymore. Zealous asks if she's looking for revenge. He admits he actually kind of wants one of those birds as a pet. The girls can't believe what they're hearing. To them, those things are dangerous beasts, not pets. Zealous is just dreaming about the perfect egg on rice dish, but he realizes he's missing the most important part, soy sauce. He chimes in, saying she actually has some of that soy sauce from her hometown. She's willing to share some, but only on one condition. she gets to join the subjugation team. Losers tries to talk them out of it, thinking it's too dangerous to go out fighting monsters just for a condiment. Keed is determined to test her skills and see a strong man like Zealous in action. Zealous tells the worried nun that it's just a chicken hunt. It'll be totally fine as long as he's there. They decide to head out immediately while everyone else watches the odd group with a bit of concern. They arrive at a poultry farm on the outskirts of center. It seems quiet enough for now. Jean explains that the client's egg business went south when the chickens turned violent and grew out of control. A loud bang echoes from the farm. Something just came crashing down with a lot of force. They find the client, a bald guy, buried under some wreckage. He's lucky he wasn't killed. Key can feel a powerful presence nearby. The idea of a strong opponent is already getting her blood boiling. The owner isn't interested in pets. He just wants those birds gone before they wreck the rest of his farm. Zealous identifies the specialized mutants, Slash Cocos, Sniper Cocos, and Huge Grappler Coco. These birds have evolved into a much higher level species that nobody in the area has ever heard of before. A chicken lands a heavy blow on an armored knight, proving they aren't just normal poultry. Zealous says he'll happily take the birds off the owner's hands. Heed is ready to lead the charge. She faces off with a Slash Coco that's ready to slice her up with its wings. Their blades clash in a flurry of sparks. This bird is legit. It can actually parry. Keed realizes the chicken's feathers are incredibly tough, like natural armor. It's not going down easily. She goes into a high-speed exchange, parrying every wing blade strike that comes her way. She has to respect the bird's skill. If it were a man, it'd probably be a renowned warrior. The chicken lets out a loud cry as they continue their intense high-speed duel. It's almost like they're actually talking to each other through the language of their blades. They both back off for a moment, catching their breath and looking for an opening. Jean watches from the side, acknowledging that the high elf is definitely a high-level warrior. Suddenly, the Sniper Coco joins the fight, firing a projectile right at Keed. Zealous spots the threat immediately. He knows those snipers don't stay in one place for long. He flicks a small stone with perfect timing, intercepting the shot mid-air. The pebble hits the sniper chicken hard, sending it tumbling out of its hiding spot. Jean is shocked. Zealous basically predicted where the bird was moving before it even took the shot. Keed resets her stance. No hard feelings, regardless of who ends up winning this duel. She lunges back in for round 2, ready to push this battle to its conclusion. Keed lunges in for another strike, but the Slash Coco parries her perfectly with a loud, metallic clang. The sheer force of the impact sends Keed flying back. Zealous is there in an instant to catch her as she loses consciousness. Luzerus rushes over, terrified that the elf was seriously hurt. Zealous tells them to focus on her. He'll take care of the rest of the birds. The flock's leader, the massive grappler Coco, steps forward. This thing is clearly on a whole different level of power. Zealous would really prefer not to use excessive force on something he wants as a pet, but this chicken only speaks the language of violence. The bird lunges with incredible speed, but Zealous is ready for it, meeting its attack with a solid block. He realizes he's going to have to be more careful than usual. Iris calls out to him, sensing the shift in the air. Zealous activates his Fist God skill, his presence becoming sharp and intense as he drops into a martial arts stance. "I'm coming," he says quietly, before disappearing in a blur of speed. A barrage of high-speed blows trade between the two. Iris and Jean watch in shock. This chicken is actually going toe-to-toe with Zealous. Surprisingly, the bird looks like it's actually enjoying itself, thrilled to have finally found someone this strong. The bird lets out a defiant crow, basically telling him that warriors only follow the strong. Zealous is more than happy to show it what he's got. They continue their mid-air duel, trading heavy hits that echo across the entire farm. The speed of their exchange is almost impossible to follow as punches and kicks fly in every direction. Zealous spots a momentary opening. "You're unguarded on your sides," he shouts, moving in to finish it. A final, massive blow lands squarely, and a long-fought battle finally comes to an end. Phew! Zealous takes a moment to catch his breath and pat his hands clean. It's over. To everyone's absolute shock, the entire flock of chickens immediately drops into a deep bow of submission. Zealous is a bit taken aback by their reaction. "Is this your way of telling me that you'll follow me?" The Grappler Coco makes it official, asking him to be their new teacher. Zealous is fine with it, as long as they keep the eggs coming. Keed wakes up to see the once ferocious beasts acting like well-trained pets. She's completely stunned by Zealous's power. Her eyes light up with excitement. This is exactly the kind of adventure she was hoping for when she joined up. Zealous sighs, realizing his student count just went up on an entire flock of chickens. But for the sake of his eggs, it's worth it. As he's thinking, he notices a single glowing strand of hair caught on his fingers. It's from Keed. He must have snagged it when he caught her earlier. A high elf's hair is an incredibly valuable item for any alchemist. He starts imagining all the high-level potions and items he could make with this. His inner sage is already hard at work. He gets so caught up in his plans that he completely zones out, a weirdly intense look on his face. Iris snaps him out of it, telling him to stop being weird so they can head back to church. Yeah, let's go, he mumbles. They all walk home together, followed by a neat line of mutant chickens. At least breakfast is going to be amazing tomorrow. The student rubs his head, frustrated that he can't make any sense of the magic formula in front of him. He lets out a loud groan, completely overwhelmed by the mountain of research papers and magic circles cluttering his desk. His master gave him the task of improving hidden treasure magic, but the job is turning out to be an absolute nightmare. He explains to his classmate, Celestina, that trying to fix a spell without knowing the mechanics is like trying to fix a clock from scratch. While they're stuck in the hall of the Ister Institute, someone approaches and asks why they look so troubled. It's an old acquaintance named Croesus, and Celestina is shocked to see how much he's changed since their last meeting. Croesus takes a look at their assignment and asks what on earth they've been trying to accomplish. The student vents his frustration, explaining that they can barely even decipher the spells, let alone improve them. He stares blankly at the magic circles, wondering why their master would even give them such an impossible assignment. Croesus goes quiet for a moment, deep in thought as he examines the notes the two have compiled. He gives them some straightforward advice. They need to go back to the basics and review their techniques thoroughly. He suggests it would be more productive to focus on other types of magic instead of wasting time here. The truth finally clicks. Their master gave them the impossible task just to trick them into studying the basics first. The student realizes his master has a bit of a terrible personality for playing them like that. He's annoyed at being tricked, but Croesus points out that research results are never easy to produce. Croesus picks up a spell and notes that its weight has been significantly reduced to an elementary level. The young man admits he was trying to streamline the flow of multiple equations, but couldn't get them to mesh. Croesus is so impressed that he wants to write a letter to the great sage immediately to show off their work. He lets out a weary sigh, admitting he's starting to regret not coming back home earlier this summer. Suddenly, a girl with animal ears named Irene bursts in, yelling at Croesus for skipping out on his cleaning duties. Irene introduces herself as Croesus's sister and mentions she's already heard plenty about the duo. Despite his protests, Irene starts dragging her brother away to make sure he finishes his chores. The student watches them go, amazed at how much even someone as refined as Croesus can change around a woman. Regardless of the interruption, Celestina is glad they found a solution and suggests they go back to the drawing board. She gives him an encouraging smile, reminding him that small, consistent efforts will eventually lead them to the top. She gets fired up and pulls out her mace, ready to start training with everything she's got. She mentions that the annual field training is coming up soon and they need to be prepared. She's genuinely looking forward to it, especially since she can finally fight now that she's mastered some magic. She playfully warns him that she won't be losing to him when the training finally starts. The scene shifts to the imposing exterior of the Ister Institute of Magic High School. Inside, the Association of Tactical Theory is in session, with students debating different war strategies. A student named Sam Troll is getting called out for a reckless plan that treats soldiers like they're disposable. Sam Troll slams the table in a rage, demanding to know what's so wrong with his perfect strategy. The others argue that his plan is far too risky and relies on a type of magic that hasn't even been proven. His idea is to send knights and mercenaries in head-on, while mages use massive spells to wipe out whatever's left. The other students ridicule the plan, noting that it assumes the enemy is completely incompetent and predictable. They flatly reject the strategy, calling it a set of poor assumptions rather than an actual tactic. Sam Troll tries to pull rank. The student reminds him that his noble status means nothing within these walls. He clenches his teeth, telling them they simply don't understand what a realistic strategy looks like. The rest of the group remains unconvinced, agreeing that wasting forces is never a viable course of action. They tell him point-blank that he's failing to account for the fact that their enemies are human beings with their own tactics. Sam Troll is left trembling with fury as the sounds of the other students' chatter fill the room. The meeting of the Tactical Studies group finally wraps up for the day, and the members start to clear out. Sam Troll is left alone at the table, trembling with rage as he slams his fist down in frustration. He fumes about his ruined winning streak and curses Sylvester for saying things the others didn't need to hear. He's especially annoyed that he can't control the others anymore now that his brainwashing magic isn't working. He starts planning his revenge, realizing that the upcoming annual field training is the perfect opportunity. His plan is simple and ruthless. He'll attack Sylvester during the training and make it look like an accident. Sam Troll's companion agrees that an accidental death is the best way to handle the situation. Gritting his teeth, Sam Troll is determined to get Sylvester while he still has the chance. He lets out a manic laugh, mocking Sylvester for having no idea what kind of plans are being made behind his back. Meanwhile, at a quiet house in the country, a man named Zealous finds a letter waiting for him in his mailbox. He opens it up and sees that it's from his students, Sylvester and Celestina. They tell him they decided to rethink their basic magic spells from scratch, which clearly pleases him. He reads further as Celestina explains they've laid out the groundwork and hope to clear their assignment soon. Zealous smiles, thinking to himself that seeing his students do well is the best part of being a tutor. He notices a crinkled, scribbled letter and wonders if it's another message from Croesus. Shifting his focus to his cooking, Zealous admires the perfect egg-on-rice dish he's finally managed to create. He takes a bite and savors it, but quickly realizes that something is a bit off with the balance. He's shocked to find the egg is so rich that it's completely overpowering the flavor of the soy sauce. He realizes he'll need to make a better soy sauce to match eggs of this caliber, but his musings are interrupted by a knock at the door. He finds a refined older man standing there, who introduces himself as Dandis, the butler of the Salstia family. Dandis explains that his master, the father of Sylvester and Celestina, has insisted that Zealous come for a visit. The butler adds that the madam of the house wants him to come in formal attire, if at all possible. Zealous checks himself in a mirror and realizes it's been 7 long years since he's taken any care of his appearance. He starts grooming himself, trimming his stubble, and patting down his hair to look presentable. He pulls out a set of old clothes, admitting it's embarrassing to be called the Black Annihilator, but it's the best he has. He dons a suit of dark, heavy armor and zips it up, looking like a completely different person. Zealous stands ready in his full gear, looking every bit the warrior he once was. Dandis is stunned by the transformation, asking if he's actually planning on going to war in such dangerous armor. Zealous gives him a sheepish look, but then asks if they can stop by the orphanage on their way. Zealous stops at the church door and knocks, asking if Lazarus is inside. Lazarus opens the door and is immediately taken aback by his sudden appearance. She stares in disbelief, asking Zealous what on earth is with the new outfit. Lazarus is so shocked she nearly drops everything, her mouth hanging open in surprise. Zealous asks if he looks weird, but she assures him he actually looks quite a bit like a reverend. He hands over some leftover eggs for the children, telling her they're too valuable to waste. Suddenly, a woman named Jean walks out wearing only her underwear, complaining about drinking too much the night before. Jean is horrified when she realizes Zealous is standing right there, and she turns beet red from embarrassment. She screams and shields herself, while Lazarus panics and tells Zealous not to look at her worrisome outfit. A young girl named Iris runs in to see what the fuss is about, calling Zealous the Black Annihilator. Zealous tells Iris to stop calling him by that name, as he explains he's just on an errand. Before leaving, Zealous promises Iris that he'll teach her how to temper metals the next time he visits. Lazarus tells Zealous to take care as he and the butler finally set off on their journey. Back at the orphanage, the girls gossip about Zealous, with Lazarus being teased about whether she likes that old man. Jean is flustered and embarrassed, frantically explaining that she didn't mean to be seen in such a state earlier. Blushing deeply, Jean insists she has no interest in men, especially not an old man like their former tutor. The scene transitions to the grand and imposing Saltia mansion, where Zealous has just arrived. Dandis escorts Zealous into the private study, announcing his arrival to the lord of the house. Elsasis, the lord of Saltia, sits at his desk, looking tired from the weight of his responsibilities. He thanks Zealous for coming and mentions that he has a personal favor to ask regarding his son and daughter. Elsasis explains that Sylvester will soon be doing field training in the forest and wants Zealous to be his secret escort. He describes a complex political situation involving a factional war and a schism within the students' ranks. Elsasis identifies Sam Troll, the Marquis of Whistler's son, as a dangerous individual who is targeting Sylvester. He reveals that the Whistler family is in financial trouble, making them desperate enough to take drastic measures. He further explains that Sam Troll is connected to a dark organization and is actively planning to kill Sylvester. Zealous listens intently, realizing the severity of the threat facing his former student. He accepts the job without hesitation, stating that he could never ignore a threat to one of his own students. They discuss the Hydra organization, which Elsasis describes as a dangerous and coordinated group of criminals. Elsasis mentions he has experience dealing with such groups, though this one has proven to be particularly elusive. He warns that Sylvester has attracted some very troublesome people who will do anything for the right price. Elsasis suggests that Zealous should infiltrate the training session as one of the accompanying mercenaries. He asks Zealous to arrive a few days early to prepare and offers to pay for his journey to the academy. Zealous agrees to the plan, deciding to seek out any other free mercenaries who might be useful for the mission. He reflects on the gravity of the mission, still finding it hard to believe his student's life is in such danger. Zealous asks how Elsasis obtained such secretive information about the Dark Organization. Elsasis cryptically explains it was through underworld channels, leaving Zealous to wonder about the Lord's own past. Zealous prepares to depart for the academy, promising to keep the Lord updated on the situation. Elsasis looks at him with deep sincerity, formally entrusting Sylvester's safety into Zealous's hands. Zealous looks back with a determined and unwavering gaze, ready to take on the responsibility. He gives a confident nod and tells Elsasis to leave the matter entirely to him. After Zealous leaves, the Lord lets out a weary sigh and finally closes the doors to his office. Back at the academy, Sylvester sits at his desk, deep in thought as he examines a magic grid. The device hums with a vibrant glow as Sylvester meticulously works on his latest project. Late into the night, the magic fizzes and crackles as the student pushes himself to master his craft. He's got the magic seal ready to go. Now it's just a matter of compressing the whole thing. It's wild to him how the magic technology in this world matches the stuff from his old game almost perfectly. He remembers how detailed that VR world was, right down to the individual people living in it. It makes him wonder who actually went through the trouble of creating it, and why he was the one stuck playing it. To pull off something that massive, it would have to be the work of God. And again, maybe even a god didn't expect evil gods to exist in the first place. He wraps up his work by finishing a new amulet with a magic seal stone. Elsewhere, a girl with red twin tails is having a complete meltdown over being broke and having 0 job offers. Turns out she's a pretty terrible mercenary, and she even lost a fight to some giant chickens called Cocos. She decides to head back and ask the old man to teach her alchemy so she can actually make some money. She arrives back at the house just in time to see a whole lot of chaos happening in the yard. She knocks on the door, and someone finally lets her inside. She walks in and finds him showing off a shiny, custom-built motorcycle. She can't believe her eyes. A bike in a world like this? He explains that since it runs on magic, he doesn't ever have to worry about finding gasoline. He mentions he has a favor to ask of her, too, while she's still in shock. She asks if he'll be okay by himself, but he's already got a plan. He points out his new bodyguards, a pack of those giant chickens, and they look ready for a fight. They look so aggressive that he's actually worried they'll forget their duties and just start a brawl with the demons. Since she brought her own medicinal herbs, she asks him to teach her some simple recipes. He agrees, thinking it's a good way for her to make some money by selling medicine and magic stones. They get right to work, and she starts pouring the ingredients to brew the mixture. She pulls off. She successfully creates wound-healing medicine and even gains the concoction skill. Meanwhile, he's back on his bike, looking pretty satisfied with how things turned out. Over at the Eastern Magic Academy, a student named Celestina makes her way through the halls. She clutches her textbook tight as she walks, seemingly focused on her own world. Even in the library, she sits alone, buried in her research. The other students whisper and keep their distance, which makes her feel more than a little lonely. They've started calling her a genius girl because of her magic, but that talent just seems to alienate everyone else. Suddenly, she hears a loud commotion coming from outside the library. She finds a group of girls bullying a beastwoman student, pinning her down with a force-bind spell. Celestina recognizes the spell immediately and notices the girl's ears. She's from the Hound clan. The bullies mock her for not using magic to break free, while Celestina watches from the shadows, hidden by a mirage curtain. They keep laughing, telling her she stinks like a dog and doesn't belong at the academy. Celestina thinks back to what her professor told her about how beastmen use magic. The professor had explained that the textbooks are actually wrong, and beastmen use magic all the time. He described it as body enhancement magic, where they circulate power internally to boost their physical strength. He even offered to teach her more about it, if she was interested in learning. Seeing the girl struggle, Celestina realizes the beast woman already has the power. She just doesn't know how to channel it. The bullies call the girl trash and tell her she should just disappear from the school. Celestina steps out and starts coaching the girl, telling her to gather the magic around her navel and knead it into a ball. She tells her to feel the heat rise from her stomach and let the magic flow through every single inch of her body. The beast woman student, Olna Raha, is still pinned down, but she's finally starting to find her focus. She asks herself if she can really pull this off as she stares down her bullies. With a sudden burst of power, she snaps the magic bonds holding her, catching everyone off guard. She stands tall, amazed at how easy it was to break the spell once she knew the trick. She turns to her bullies with a confident grin, telling them it's officially payback time. Her expression turns cold as she warns them that she could kill them without breaking a sweat. Suddenly, she catches a scent and demands that whoever is hiding show themselves immediately. Celestina drops her invisibility spell and steps out, which sends the group of bullies into a panic. She doesn't hold back, lecturing them about how using force to oppress others only invites their own destruction. She turns to Ulna with some encouragement, telling her that everyone starts out weak before they get strong. Celestina explains that beastmen are naturally gifted at channeling magic into their bodies to boost their physical power. She calls the bullies a disgrace to their country, and they're so shaken they can barely speak. The lead bully realizes that crossing Celestina means dealing with some of the most powerful mages in the world. Terrified, the girls bolt for it, screaming that they aren't ready to die today. Ulna is genuinely impressed that Celestina managed to scare them off with just a few words. She's incredibly grateful for the help and for the advice on how to fight back using her heritage. Ulna is so eager to repay the favor that she practically begs Celestina to give her task. Celestina takes her up on it, asking if she'd like to team up for the live training session next week. Ulna promptly introduces herself, admitting she's a bit of a dropout, but promising to make Celestina proud. She mentions she was raised by a man named Serga Zephin, which immediately catches Celestina's attention. It turns out her guardian is the famous mage known as the Daylight Lantern. Celestina starts to wonder if she can finally talk openly about her professor with someone like Ulna. Ulna is still amazed by Celestina's magic and asks who on earth taught her how to be so strong. Celestina explains that it's all thanks to a professor she met during her summer vacation. She starts gushing about how amazing he is, saying she couldn't even use magic until he taught her. To her, he's the ultimate genius, and she dreams of becoming someone just like him someday. Ulna leans in and asks the big question: does she actually like the professor? Celestina completely loses it, blushing red while insisting she just has a massive amount of respect for him. Suddenly, a voice from behind startles them both, asking if they're having a friendly chat about love. It's a maid from the academy, and she isn't passing up the chance to tease the loner young lady. She hands over a letter, telling Celestina that the Grand Master has a special message for her. The two girls huddle together to read the contents, looking pretty surprised by what's written. Later that day, in the library, two students are catching up on some work and discussion. The brown-haired student tries to stay positive, telling his friend they can still make it to the training. The student with glasses, Croesus, is more interested in using his materials for another research project. He complains about his room being a mess, which he blames on the garbage other people leave around. He's a total research nerd, even finding satisfaction in checking out things like chimera poison. Celestina bursts in out of breath, looking like she's in a total state of panic. She drops the bombshell: the professor is going to be a bodyguard for the upcoming live training. The guys are stunned, wondering why her father would ask him of all people to step in. Croesus starts to get nervous, having heard that the professor can be absolutely relentless when he wants to be. His friend tells him to stop worrying, betting that the two of them will actually hit it off. Croesus continues his monologue, emphasizing that research is the only thing that actually matters to him. Miska suddenly appears out of thin air, scaring Sylvester half to death as she delivers the news of the Master's arrival. Croesus is ecstatic to hear about the great sage's latest magic tools, while Miska notes that Zealous will be arriving shortly. The news that the professor made the journey in just 3 hours has Croesus geeking out over the mechanics of his mobility device. Sylvester is stressed about an upcoming meeting, while Celestina is focused on her promise to teach Shasta Rail some magic. Miska takes charge of the situation, deciding that she and Croesus will be the ones to go and meet Master Zealous. Sylvester encourages Croesus to use this chance to finally introduce himself to the man he admires so much. Croesus is all in, already planning out all the technical questions he wants to grill the Master about. Miska tells Croesus he needs to change his clothes first, but he's already buried in the clutter of his messy room. Sylvester watches the chaos from the hallway, wondering how his friend even manages to navigate such a disaster area safely. A bit later, the intense tactical discussion session at the academy finally comes to its conclusion. Sylvester walks out feeling confident, convinced that his strategies were much better than anyone else's ideas. A younger student praises him, claiming that Sylvester is the only one who should be in command if a war breaks out. The moment is ruined when they run into Sam Troll, who is looking as arrogant and unpleasant as ever. Sam Troll immediately starts mocking Sylvester, calling him out for having such a blunt attitude and a massive ego. Sylvester doesn't even blink, meeting the insult with a cold, piercing stare that shows he isn't intimidated. He quickly turns the tables, revealing that he knows all about Sam Troll's secret dealings with some very shady people. He pushes the advantage, asking if Sam Troll is planning an assassination after being spotted at a bar with criminals. Sam Troll completely loses his cool and starts panicking, but Sylvester just smiles and mentions they have a trump card. Dismissing the flustered noble, Sylvester tells him that he's already given him more than enough information for one day. To himself, Sylvester can't believe how easily the guy fell for the bluff, making a total fool of himself in the process. He tells the group to enjoy their freedom while it lasts, because execution is the only thing waiting for them in the end. He drops a final truth bomb. His higher royal ranking gives him the authority to dispose of them whenever he feels like it. Sam Troll is left in a state of pure shock, his eyes wide with terror as he realizes just how much trouble he's in. Sylvester's friend is a bit freaked out by the intensity of the exchange, but Sylvester just tells him to keep walking. Sam Troll's allies are starting to sweat, realizing they completely underestimated the information network of the Solstia household. Sam Troll desperately tries to convince himself that it's all just a bluff, and that there's no way Sylvester has any real proof. His companion is already checking out, realizing that staying by Sam Troll's side is going to end in nothing but regret. In a moment of sheer desperation, Sam Troll decides that if he's going to fall, he's going to take Sylvester down with him. Nearby, a subtle crackle of magic signals that someone is preparing to make a very big move. Master Zealous, the legendary professor, adjusts his hat with a confident smirk, deciding it's finally time to go help his apprentice. Zealous shows off his latest creation, the magical automatic two-wheeled Bike Harry Thunder, the 13th edition. Iris and the girls look on with a mix of awe and confusion while the giant Cocos stand by, ready to move. Zealous is hyped and ready to set off on his mission to protect the academy students. They arrive at Hubport Season, where the scale of the ships and the docks is pretty impressive. Iris is already done for, literally crawling on the ground from a nasty case of seasickness. Rina is skeptical, asking if Zealous really plans to use that magic tool to travel all the way to their destination. He tells them to stay calm and starts summoning something else to help with the logistics. With a sudden bang, a massive trailer filled with cushions appears behind a bike. It's designed to be towed, meaning the giant chickens can actually ride along this time. They hit the road, and the initial speed actually has the group feeling pretty good. Zealous explains the tech, saying he got the idea for the motor while trying to build a centrifuge. Nearby, a couple of guys in a carriage are busy checking out the girls riding the trailer. One of them is complaining that if only Zealous wasn't there, they have a better view. Suddenly, the bike roars past them with a deafening blast, nearly knocking their horse off balance. The men are left in the dust, completely baffled by what just flew past their carriage. Zealous is in the zone, feeling great about how smoothly his hairy thunder is handling the road. He mentions he needs to register at the guild in Stilla to be officially accepted as an escort. Iris asks if he's registering with their guild, since she and the others are mercenaries too. Zealous admits he's heading towards Sedan City, but he's starting to get a bad feeling about their direction. He looks back and sees Jean and Rina clutching their mouths, looking green from the motion. Even the giant Cocos have completely lost their composure and look pale from the shaking. Iris points out that if they don't hurry to the guild reception, they won't be able to register in time. Zealous finally notices the forest is way too thick and the path is looking a bit too narrow. He starts sweating, wondering if he actually made a wrong turn somewhere back there. He shouts back to Iris, asking if there was a fork in the road that they might have missed. She confirms they passed one a long time ago, and Zealous realizes they're officially behind schedule. He tells everyone to hold on tight as he prepares to fix his mistake the fast way. He pulls a violent, high-speed U-turn that sends a trailer, and everyone in it, skidding across the dirt. Iris is the only one having fun, comparing the crazy turn to a roller coaster ride. Zealous apologizes, but says he has to pick up the speed now to make up for lost time. He leaves a massive circular skid mark on the road as he blasts back toward the correct path. They finally reach the gates of Stilla City, though the silence from the trailer is a bit concerning. As soon as they stop, Jean and Rina collapse out of the cart, looking like they've seen the afterlife. Zealous asks if it really shook that much, while Rina groans that humans weren't meant to ride in that thing. The Cocos are slumped over too, looking just as defeated by the high-speed travel as the girls. Despite the casualties, Zealous is just happy they made it to the mercenary guild on time. Inside, Iris comments on how different and nice this guild branch looked compared to their usual one. She asks if he's really going to get a card just for the letter, but Zealous is confident in the Duke's connection. They walk up to the counter, and Zealous asks if this is where they take on the Academy bodyguard request. The receptionist is cheerful, telling them they're lucky they arrived just before the request was closed. Zealous presents his letter of introduction and asks to be put through to the guild master. The receptionist's face goes pale as he reads the letter, and he rushes off in a complete panic. Siphon, the guild manager, welcomes Zealous and asks about the letter from Duke Belsasis. He gives him a charming greeting, though his flamboyant attitude catches everyone off guard. Siphon gets straight to the point, mentioning that the Duke wants Zealous to be an S-rated mercenary. The idea of someone getting the highest rank so easily sounds reckless to the other members. Siphon explains that he'll only recognize his power after a duel in the training area. Zealous isn't thrilled about fighting, especially since he considers himself a pacifist. The manager is curious about his skills, while Zealous just wants to get this over with. The two face off in the arena as the crowd watches with high expectations. Jean realizes who they're dealing with, the legendary S-rank fencer known as Siphon the Flash. Zealous draws his daggers, promising to show he can handle the escort request. Siphon is eager to see what the strongest mage can do in physical fight. He draws his rapier with sharp shing, and the atmosphere instantly gets heavy. The crowd is stunned as the two combatants begin trying to read each other's movements. The air crackles with tension as they both wait for the perfect moment to strike. The blades finally clash, creating a shower of sparks that lights up the training area. The exchange is a blur of strikes and parries, with neither side giving an inch. The onlookers are amazed that a middle-aged man can keep up with the guildmaster's speed. Siphon is having the time of his life, impressed that his opponent is matching him without even trying hard. Zealous notices his opponent's sword speed is picking up as the fight intensifies. Siphon continues his relentless barrage, laughing as he pushes Zealous to the limit. The girls are shocked he can block so many rapier hits with just a small knife. Siphon decides it's time to get serious and unleashes his signature Phantom Slash. He moves with incredible speed, but Zealous reacts instantly to the sudden increase in pressure. In a move called Point Blank Assault, Zealous expertly pins the rapier's tip with his own blade. Siphon is caught completely off guard as his weapon is neutralized in an instant. Before he can recover, Zealous closes the distance and places his dagger right at Siphon's throat. The duel is over, and the room falls into a stunned silence as everyone processes what just happened. Siphon is impressed, comparing the way he threw a knife and closed the gap to an assassin's technique. The manager gracefully admits defeat, acknowledging that Zealous is undoubtedly an S-rank mercenary. He claims the world is large, and Zealous is only the 5th person he's ever met who is stronger than him. Siphon starts looking at him with a little too much admiration, which starts to weird Zealous out. He even suggests they have a more private talk later, giving him a playful wink. Zealous is left blushing and completely confused by the manager's sudden change in attitude. He makes a quick exit, while Iris shouts after him that he hasn't even gotten his guild card yet. Iris and the girls can only sigh as they watch their mentor run off in a panic. Zealous officially receives his S-rank card, and his victory over Siphon becomes the talk of the town. Meanwhile, the giant Cocos are attracting a lot of attention for being surprisingly fluffy and quiet. A few Goon mercenaries try to pick a fight with the giant birds, which turns out to be a massive mistake. One of the birds delivers a swift kick that sends a guy in armor flying through the air. These 3, Zanki, Yuki, and Sunke, are the most powerful of the creatures under Zealous's care. They quickly become legends in their own right, known locally as the 3 martial chickens. After a long and eventful day, Zealous finally settles into his room in Stilla Village. Just as Zealous is getting comfortable, a knock at the door interrupts his peace. Expecting a visitor, he calls out for them to enter. The door opens to reveal Miska, the stern and efficient maid of the Saltia family. Zealous is surprised to see her in Stilla Village. Zealous asks how Celestina and Sylvester are doing, and Miska assures him that they are both excelling in their studies. She mentions that while the younger siblings couldn't make it, Croesus has come in their place to seek his guidance. Zealous looks around, wondering where Sylvester's older brother is, only to find him in a rather peculiar state. It turns out Croesus was so caught up in his research that he refused to leave his room, so Miska had to take measures. Zealous realizes she went a bit too far. Miska nonchalantly drags a tightly bound and gagged Croesus into the room, much to Zealous's dismay. Despite being tied up, Croesus is only focused on his work, immediately asking Zealous for help with a high-speed magical tool project. The moment the words magic tool are mentioned, Croesus becomes incredibly hyperactive, startling Zealous with his sudden burst of energy. He starts rambling about specs and ranges, completely ignoring the fact that he's still tied up like a mummy. Zealous notes that Croesus seems like the type of person who is only interested in his hobbies, a trait they might actually share. Once he's allowed to speak, Croesus introduces himself formally and expresses how much he's been wanting to learn from the great sage. Zealous awkwardly suggests they cut the ropes first before getting into any serious lessons. Miska is already on it with a very intimidating knife. They finally get to work on the bike, with Zealous directing Croesus on how to secure the sidecar shaft and frame. Croesus is fascinated by the machine's construction, noting that he's never seen anything like it before. Zealous admits that he installed a built-in weapon out of pure curiosity, though he worries it might be a bit too powerful. He mentions that he used magic alchemy to create the bike, which makes its performance somewhat unstable for now. Croesus is stunned that Zealous can use such an advanced technique, considering it the pinnacle of what a mage can achieve. Zealous modestly downplays his skills, even mentioning he recently got a title called Hermit of the Gods that he doesn't quite understand. Croesus practically begs to be taught more, his eyes sparkling with the intensity of a true scholar. Zealous feels a bit overwhelmed. Zealous encourages him, saying that once he masters the basics of forging and magic, creating tools will become second nature. The young man is completely captivated by the possibility, though Zealous privately worries about the sheer cost of materials for a student. Croesus presents a massive stack of papers, his own take on deciphering and reconstructing magic circles, and asks for a critique. Zealous looks it over and gives him solid 85 out of 100, praising the stability and shape of the magic. He begins pointing out specific flaws, like the size of the circle and redundant runes that could be optimized. Croesus is overjoyed with the feedback, realizing that this is exactly what he needs to take his research to the next level. Zealous is impressed by the boy's talent for production, noting that he seems to have natural affinity for it, much like himself. Croesus asks for more advice, specifically on how to create a magical formula that has never been made before. Zealous explains the importance of the magic control skill to prevent distortions and ensure the formula works correctly every time. He wonders how much of his knowledge from games is actually applicable here, though he's careful not to let on. Curious, Zealous asks where they kept such a massive amount of papers. Miska simply gestures that she carried the whole stack by hand, looking entirely unfazed. Miska creeps them out with her maid's skirt secrets talk. Zealous and Croesus look like they've seen way too much already. Zealous gets back to business, pulling out some special gear for the group's field training. These are just for show. The amulets provide a barrier, and the rings are linked to Zealous's mask so he can track them. Croesus is geeking out over the tech. He's even more impressed when he hears the ring warns of incoming danger. He warns them that Sylvester isn't the only one in danger. They might all be targets. The researcher is more interested in the technology than the threat. The professor has to ask if he's planning to hog it all. Miska collects the items while the man notes that he and Croesus share a similarly reckless personality. Zealous explains how his magical alchemy allowed him to craft everything in record time. His philosophy is simple. Sometimes you just have to push through with magic, even if it wastes some materials. Croesus is totally down for that. To him, that kind of risk is just part of the thrill. Zealous thinks the guy will make a great mage, even if he's a bit on the wild side. He wraps up the meeting, telling Miska he has one more errand to run. He's off to meet with the mercenaries who'll be handling the escort duties. Zealous makes it to the inn, only to get hit with a cold dose of reality from Jean and the girls. He's having a full-blown crisis after finding out that Siphon has a harem of 3 wives. Iris snaps at the old man to stop whining and focus on a mission plan. The man is still moping, but Rena points out that they don't even get to pick which students they're protecting. Rena and Jean explain that with 1 guard per 7 students, everyone is going to be spread thin. Zealous decides to deploy the Cocos as backup. Iris and Rena can only imagine how ridiculous chickens would look in a fight. He shrugs and mentions a tiny detail. These chickens have actually reached level 400. A giant Coco lets out a massive crow. The man claims they're basically as strong as intermediate dragons. Since he's the one who gave them this job, he hands over some protective rings and amulets to the girls. Iris thinks the gear looks plain, but Jean senses the barrier power. Rena is just impressed that Zealous made them himself. He tells them the gear is free, and Rena is over the moon about it. Zealous reminds them that the field training kicks off the day after tomorrow. He tells them to rest up tomorrow, but Rena and Iris are already planning a trip to town. Jean reminds them they aren't there to play. Back at the estate, Miska walks down the quiet library halls. She finds Sylvester and Celestina waiting for her. The boy isn't happy about the delay. She explains that Zealous and Croesus were busy geeking out over magic circles. Sylvester just sighs at his teacher's carefree lifestyle. The maid pulls out the magic tools that were sent over for their protection. The kids lean in, curious about what kind of magic these things have. Miska explains the auto barrier and the tracking ring that warns them of danger. Sylvester is stunned he made these so quickly. Celestina is just in awe of the professor's bottomless talent. Miska mentions that Zealous was really concerned about them, which catches them off guard. The kids get serious. The boy says they need to make sure they're sharp too. They talk about the trip. Even though they're in different carriages, Celestina is excited to see him on the road. Then the maid drops the bomb about him bringing chickens as a reserve force. She adds that they're supposedly very violent, leaving the kids totally baffled. Sylvester shakes it off. He tells Celestina they can't just rely on the tools. They have to fight their own battles. He warns her not to get sloppy, since she's a potential target too. She nods in agreement. He tells her to be ready for the big day coming up. He's trying to keep his head in the game, but the idea of bloodthirsty chickens is already haunting him. One of the giant chickens, Coco, lets out a proud crow. Zealous Merlin watches on, knowing the others have no clue how much raw power Yuki and the rest are actually packing. He's actually giving them orders, making sure they know their only job is to be bodyguards. The birds, though, seem a bit more eager to kick every bandit out of the forest themselves. One of the birds gives him a sharp salute in response. Zealous just hopes everything goes smoothly and Sylvester stays safe. He puts on a confident grin, telling the group it's almost time to head out to the training site. Their destination is Rama Forest, a massive wooded area sitting right in the heart of the kingdom. It's a dangerous place used as a training ground for mages and knights, and students have already been on the road for 2 days. Karasti is absolutely spent, panting for air and clearly not built for long-distance hiking. While the beastmen in the class are doing just fine, everyone else is exhausted. Even Christine is barely hanging on. Celestina is one of the few who still looks energized. All that extra training she's been putting in is finally paying off. Suddenly, she points down the path. It looks like they aren't the only ones in the forest. It's the mercenaries. Jean, Iris, and Rena have already reached the campsite. Iris is complaining about how boring the job is since they haven't seen an orc yet. She spots the students and is shocked to see them arriving without a scratch on them. Celestina recognizes the mercenary with the twin tails. It's the same girl who was around when she and Sylvester were captured by bandits. The mercenaries remember her too. They realize she's the apprentice of the old man they're working with. Iris is thrilled she wasn't mistaken. She's genuinely glad to see a familiar face out here. The girl with twin tails introduces the rest of her team, explaining that they're actually part of the same escort mission as the professor. The students wonder where Zealous went, but Iris mentions she can sense a strong presence nearby. That's likely him. Suddenly, a massive thud shakes the ground. It's raining people. Bandits are literally falling out of the trees like ripe fruit. The girls look up in horror. The white devils are at it again. The Cocos have been systematically wiping out the local bandit population on their own. Further down the path, the rest of the class is still struggling. Dio is completely out of breath, and Sylvester tells him he can hitch a ride in the carriage if he can't make it. Sylvester is feeling the burn too, wondering what's taking the others so long. He looks up and sees a familiar face waiting in the shade. It's Zealous, but he's rocking a whole new look with a fedora and pipe. He asks if that's Sylvester. Sylvester is stunned to see him dressed like a rugged traveler. The man explains it's a request from Duke Delsasis to keep his identity on the down low. The boy can't believe his father would go to such lengths. Zealous adds that the new outfit is also meant to intimidate any would-be attackers. He gets serious, suspecting that Sam Troll is definitely mixed up in something dangerous and that they should expect skilled enemies soon. Sylvester asks how he managed to beat them to the side. The professor just points to his toy, the magic motorcycle. The boy is amazed, but the man just brushes it off as a simple tool for moving around. He mentions that Croesus spent the whole time asking him a million questions about it. He laughs it off, saying he needs to refine the design so it's actually safe to use. Then he asks if anyone else has been following them. Sylvester mentions the 3 mercenaries and the giant chickens that Misko warned him about. Zealous warns him not to take them lightly. Those Cocos are already over level 400 and could probably wipe out every mercenary in the area if they wanted to. Sylvester is losing it. He asks how a chicken could possibly be that strong. The master just says they've been training their fists every single day. That's not much of an explanation. Suddenly, a massive rumble and a boom echo from somewhere deep in the woods. Screams fill the air as bodies are sent flying through the canopy. Zealous calmly figures the Cocos must have found another group of bandits. He explains their kung fu style. They spin their wings with magical power, launching strikes that break the speed of sound. A massive whirlwind erupts, slamming a bandit into the ground with a sickening thud. The students can only watch in stunned silence. One guy is stuck headfirst in the dirt. Zealous notes that the chickens are actually getting better at holding back, which only makes Sylvester more terrified. The professor suspects the guy was hired by Sabivo, but he's quickly corrected. It's actually Sam Troll. He considers it lucky the Cocos found them first. He tells the group it's time to set up their tents, since this is a wartime exercise. Dio thinks his master is even crazier than he realized. Sylvester reminds the other students that mages are expected to serve in the military, so they better learn how to set up camp properly. The man gives him a cool tip of his hat and tells them he'll see them later. The students reach the designated campsite and start unloading their heavy gear. Celestina and the other girls are completely lost. They have all the parts, but they have absolutely no idea how to actually build a tent. Karasti is beyond frustrated, insisting it's absurd to expect them to build something they haven't been taught yet. Iris just watches them dawdle, wondering why they're making such a big deal out of it. Karasti then turns her anger on Iris, demanding to know why she's being so formal with Celestina while treating her like a commoner. She huffs that she's a noble too and can't accept such blatant favoritism in how they're addressed. Suddenly, a rustle in the trees catches their attention. Zealous Merlin steps out of the foliage, looking completely different in his rugged traveler gear. Celestina's face lights up instantly at the sight of him. He greets her warmly, saying it's been a while. Celestina is just relieved to see that he's doing well out in the wild. She's impressed by his new look, but he just sighs, explaining that the extra armor is strictly for the work ahead. He warns her that bandits are already swarming the forest. The other students, including Ulna, ask if this is the famous teacher they've heard so much about. Zealous introduces himself politely to the group. Karasti is absolutely starstruck. She screams in excitement, realizing this is the legendary mage she's been dying to meet in person. She introduces herself properly, and Zealous is glad to hear that Celestina has made some good friends at the academy. He explains that he'll be escorting them in his capacity as a mercenary. Celestina is still trying to process the fact that someone is actually targeting her brother, Sylvester. Zealous starts a mini-lecture on bloodline magic, theorizing that it's often more about pedigree than actual superiority. He thinks many mages just have a capacity too large for them to handle. Karasti and Celestina lean in, completely fascinated and eager to hear more about the secrets behind their world's magic. He explains that bloodline magic is shrouded in mystery and is likely the result of biological experimentation for an ancient civilization long ago. His theory is that it was a way to forcibly expand a human's ability to process complex magical formulas by connecting them to an external terminal. He believes these traits were then inherited and branched out into various families, resulting in humans with semi-permanent connections to certain magic formulas. He admits it's just a theory, but notes that history has always progressed by trying again and again until something works. He tells them that human progress is tied to the exploration of technology, driven by a passion that never stops thinking or working hard. Realizing they've spent enough time talking, he suggests they end the lecture there. He offers to help them set up their tents, to the girl's immense relief. As they get to work, the other girl notes that he doesn't seem nearly as scary as his aura initially suggested. Celestina is beaming, her respect for her professor reaching new heights after hearing his deep insights. With his expert help, the daunting task of setting up camp goes much smoother for everyone involved. Celestina watches him, silently vowing to keep pushing herself so that one day she can stand on the same level as her master. Zealous, meanwhile, is breaking sweat, thinking to himself that teaching a group of teenagers is a lot harder than it looks. Over at the mercenary campsite, things are a bit more professional as they prepare for the night ahead in the dangerous forest. Jean, Iris, and Rena are huddled together, reviewing the final guard deployment chart for all the students. Rena notices a major issue on the paper and calls over to the old man to let him know they have a problem. Zealous takes a look at the chart and realizes there's a student on his escort list that he doesn't even recognize. Jean and Iris have already claimed the younger siblings of Saul's Tia family. Rena, however, is sulking because her assignment is Croesus, who isn't her type at all. Zealous is troubled to find that no one is currently assigned to escort Sylvester. He suggests letting Yuki and the other Cocos handle it, though the others are skeptical. Despite the uncertainty of what the future holds, Zealous and Iris stand ready to face whatever the forest might throw at them tonight.